if they're even there still.
I think.
Hello, everybody. We are here, and when I say we mean we. It's Joe Boric, the professor in the house, and yeah, we got tons to talk about. We're going to be talking a lot of Oilers, a lot of Philadelphia today. So, JJ decided to pop on, and man, I mean, it is. What do you even do with your bad self? I see you're putting out tons of like female Olympic content, and you got ECHL stuff, AHL stuff. You're putting out everything there, bud.
Yeah, and then I have the men's Olympic stuff coming out later today. Yeah, it's basically been everything in the hockey verse. Where hockey obviously is my favorite. Some people probably don't know this, but baseball is the second, with football being the other one. Where baseball is in oblivion right now, so
Yeah.
I don't want to pay attention to anything until they tell me the lockout's over. I
Right.
pay attention to some of it so I can do videos, but that's about it. So like, I'm so zoned into hockey more than ever in my life that it's like from the minors up to the juniors to the overseas leagues. I've been watching the KHL on ESPN Plus for God's sake. That's how much I've been zoned into hockey this year. That's why it's been so fun being able to have. It's kind of been fun and a luxury in a sense to have that time to pay attention to it and not worry about the MLB off season. But at the same flip side, obviously for my second favorite sport, I would like it to be back.
Yeah. Well, you got a little basketball news there.
Yeah, we got James Harden.
Yeah.
Which is a nice thing. I won't dive into too much on here. It's going to be interesting to see if we affected our depth too much.
Yeah, that was they gave up a lot for him, and Harden. Okay, I'm not going to get. We don't want to get into it because it's basketball too much. But Harden's really not known for the greatest leader in the world. From what I understand, he's kind of a selfish
He's not the
dude.
best defender either.
No, he's a pretty selfish offensive guy. He can shoot though. Oh, can he shoot?
He's one of the best shooters in the league. And in terms of selfishness, I feel like with Houston his last couple of years, obviously he just finished with Brooklyn, but the final point for that was like he got more unselfish as time went on, just realizing because most guys go from one guard, meaning point guard, to two guard if they don't work out as point guard. Where he worked out as a two guard, but he was just so good at playmaking and passing still to get double doubles that they moved him to playing point guard, and then he can do both. So like you can, that's why like in the starting five, I think it gives you good flexibility because now you have Maxey and Harden who can bring up the ball and do immensely well, and it gives you two options. It's more did it damn the bench a little bit too much, and that's my own concern.
Right. Okay, we won't go too much because that's hot. We got lots to talk about, and that's of course basketball, not hockey. Okay, so let's start. Well, we got to start with what Oilers man. I don't know if he's still in here. Unfortunately, we got started a little late because I hadn't put both of us up there at the same time for a while. It wasn't working very well, but Dave Tippett gets fired, and my unpopular view, and it has been the whole while, although I'm not sure I think Tippett was the best choice right from the get-go. And, it's been difficult. I like Woodcroft, but honestly, I think you're just asking too much from any coach to do much with that defense. I really, 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 from the beginning of the season, while they were on a winning streak, and still to now, do not like the makeup of that defense, and I don't think that Barry Trotz could get this team it past the first round with that defense. So what do you got to say about that?
That point I don't necessarily disagree with. I don't think your defense is going to do much for you, and I think at this point Stuart Skinner, and I'm not saying that because I think Skinner's actually played well this year, but just you wouldn't think I would be saying this coming into the year, is your best option in net. Where you have two things there you might want to play with in order to be more contention worthy in the postseason. But my thing I like about Woodcroft is he pulls the most out of guys. So some guys that might not have been as sexy under Tippett, where Tippett's not always the best at pulling the most out of younger guys that haven't found it yet. even if you look at him throughout his time, he's kind of just the best at putting guys that already have found it in positions at times, which he started faltering doing at the end, even with Edmonton. But like I think Dave Tippett, he's a good coach. He's going to do well elsewhere eventually if he wants another job. It's just so at certain points you meet your maker and the time comes, and that's pretty much what happened. He probably did get scapegoated for Holland and the top downs issues similarly to the Flyers, but the reason I think Woodcroft will work, I'm not saying he's going to work in the sense that the Warriors are winning a cup this year, but work if they let him have time and not just have this be for the rest of the year and then for some reason move on from him, is he's pulled the most out of guys that haven't found, like Cooper Morality, we talked about before the show, I don't think would be the successful NHLer guy, but he pulled the most out of him at the AHL level, the Seth Griffiths of the world, guys you actually might see up, like in some other guys. Like obviously Broberg, he's playing very well with him. Has 18 points this year in 26 games. Has been an assist wizard. Desjardins, the other defenseman. So like you've had guys that have been really pulling. Brad Malone has played one of his best, if not his best season. So like he pulls the most out of guys at that level. I think that's going to happen where he'll probably get the Yamamotos going again, or probably get the Fogels going again. But the defense concern is he's not going to be able to fix something that's not there. Some guys that he actually can pull more from that haven't performed to their level, I think he'll get them back to their level. But in terms of where there's just holes, you can't fix stuff that's not there unless it's, say, Broberg or Desjardins or somebody like as the defenseman you have down below that played really well for you comes up. That's somebody that wasn't on Tippett's radar. That like Niemelainen was up for Tippett more and actually does really well. Like someone that's more on Woodcraft's radar. That's the only way you're going to be able to fix that in-house, and I don't see that having a high likelihood of happening, even though I like some of those guys for the Condors. It's more as third-line defenseman, not somebody that's going to come in and fix your entire defense when you have too many flaws type of thing.
I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know much about him. I mean, the players that have come up have looked all right. I guess that's a good thing. McLeod seems to be doing well. I mean, they have. I will say that it seems that since they hired him, their development has improved. So you got to figure that's got to shine a pretty good light on him. And at the very least, those guys that did play in the AHL for him are probably going to like playing for him. And right now, it's probably not a bad idea to have a guy in there that they like playing for. I'm not sure that they didn't like playing for Tippett, but they didn't like losing. And I don't think players really, most of the players don't look at lineup matchups and stuff like that and try to figure out what the coaches are doing and all of those sort of things. There are some players that will, that will look at that. But the players as a whole generally trust their coach and just play with whoever is playing with. I'm not sure they generally look at matchups. However, there are some players that might have questioned why a guy like Turris kept on being. And also, I think everybody loves that fourth line guy.
Brandon Perlini played 21 games, and both you and I have had many conversations about Brandon Perlini, so we'll just leave it at that.
The guy's just out of shape. It's too bad. He could have been a great player if he would have just been an athlete. It's weird, really. There's weird guys like that. But, yeah, we've had lots of talk about that. And, a guy that Peyton, of course, brings up a lot, and it's true, he isn't very good offensively or defensively, but it's going to be interesting to see what Devin Shore gets now that he's in there, because I think there are better options. And I think one of the biggest reasons why Peyton was really happy is because now Benson's going to get a better chance. And I think Benson has looked better than Devin Shore when he's been on the ice. I don't know what the love affair was with. Yeah, definitely more than Kyle Turris. I think Devin Shore is one of those charisma guys. And more than likely, like I said, the players that play with Devin Shore and Benson and all that, there isn't it isn't that much moving the needle one way or another, but if he's kind of likable and everybody likes him, those guys have a tendency to get played. You know what I'm saying? It's just the way it is. I don't know if that's the best coaching in the world or whatever. Like, again, Peyton often says, and I think probably not. But as a person who has coached, I can kind of see how that could happen. You know, it's just a chemistry thing or what have you.
The one thing I will say to that, though, is Devin Shore is still 27. He's shown more than he's gave in recent years, and actually had a pretty solid season in the last couple years. He's actually been a pretty good mix-in bottom six guy, where Kyle Torres hasn't been that for the last four.
Torres shouldn't have played.
So it's more, it's more like when you keep him in the lineup because of that I don't really jive with that. Where when you keep Devin Shore in the lineup because of that, I can jive with that because the dude's 206, 6'1", skates pretty well for his size, and if you can get him going again, is a very good bottom six player still, and was that even last year.
Yeah.
So it's more like he still has more upside to me to turn it around, where Kyle Torres is basically just washed at this point, which is unfortunate because he was a fun, quicker skater with some size to watch back in the day, but he ain't that.
Yeah, I never really thought Shore was all that great. I think he will bring physicality more. He's more courageous than Benson or a lot of other players, and I think that's why he gets played more, because he's willing to take a hit. But he puts himself out of position a lot to make a hit. He's not very good defensively, and he's not very good offensively. So sometimes physicality wins over coaches quite a bit, and mostly because especially a team like Edmonton that doesn't use their physicality enough for the type of game that they need to play, he'll get played to kind of say, like what Devin's doing, all of you, all right? That's why. And I get that. I do get that. But it wasn't working. And to me, the biggest thing for the Oilers is if they're going to be successful with that defense, they got to be banging the crap out of people in the offensive zone. It's going to wear down their body the way they need to play, because they need to be controlling in the offensive zone. And if they're not, they're in trouble, because as soon as it gets in their zone, it's a shambles. It's so.
Yeah, and the problem is you have some guys like the third line with the size of Puljujarvi, McLeod, and Fogle. All those guys could theoretically do that. Zach Cashy, we know, does check people. And then Devin Shore, he goes to that position, like you said, but obviously we know he goes for the hit. You don't have in your top, like, you don't want Leon Draisaitl overly, like, you see him make good hits, but if he starts doing that, that's going to set him up. You don't want him to get injured, because then you're screwed. Kylie Yamamoto's not going to lay on hits. And then Evander Kane can do it, but he doesn't always consistently lay on hits.
Well, he should. He used to. He's got to get back to it here. That's the reason why they brought him in.
That's true. I agree with that. And then Zach Hyman is the guy that I would say in the top six that's the best at that can kind of do both things for you, where he can hit on the other end of the ice a little bit and then also be a good offensive production piece while also playing pretty solid both ends. But I think it's going to be interesting to see if they can play that style, because on paper there's only one line I see that really plays well to that style that you were talking about. Even though I do agree with you, that would be the best style to play. It would be more interesting if they can do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you want to take a good, as you say, you mentioned like Draisaitl and McDavid and those guys where you don't want them to get hurt or blah, 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 blah. Look at a team like Nashville Predators. Look what Hines did for Duchesne. Duchesne's taken the body. You don't need to beat the guy up with your body check so you wear you down, but you got to check him off the puck. You said Cassian. Cassian is rarely doing it. He's like, I watch it. He had 6 hits last game, but besides that, his hit count is like maybe 2. He's got to the point, like, you don't watch the Oilers like I do. It's got to the point where Cassian's reaching that tourist level of get him off the ice. He's not doing anything for us. And for some reason, Tippett is completely blind to that. You know, like, he just, yeah. So, that's yeah. So I think that's the main problem with what's going on with Edmonton as far as the forwards are concerned. But it's asking a lot, though. You bring up a really good point. It's asking a lot for for Draisaitl and these guys to also perform that role when they are basically doing everything else, right?
Carrying the entire team. Yeah, and you have Nuge who has 33 points, Puljujarvi has 25 that are playing very well with Hyman having 26. But like we know the depth scoring, Peyton's talked about it in his videos. You guys tried to add depth scoring the Oilers did in the offseason to only then somehow statistically have less depth scoring than last year. Yeah. So like that obviously is more of a Ken Holland issue than like you were going back to saying a coaching issue because you can't really coach what's not there.
Yeah.
But the thing is with Woodcroft, going back to what I said at the beginning, I think the Shores of the world, if he can get him to be better and just be a fourth liner, like he might be able to pull that out. The benches of the world, I think he's definitely, because he already has familiarity with him, is going to pull the best out of him because he played well with Bakersfield. So that I have no question be able to do. And then the Fogels of the world, who's been suspect this year, inconsistent, I think will get back to being more what he was with the Kings. So, like, I think he's going to do what you need to do there, but like I said, he can't just work magic and wave a magic wand and do stuff for a team that doesn't have the roster to do it. And Duncan Keith is not going to win you any defensive battles at this point of his career. Cody Ceci is what he is. He's another guy that fits into the category of overpaid right-handed. He's a good right-handed defenseman, but like sometimes teams I think have overvalued Cody Ceci as a top four when he's probably more of a third pairing.
For sure.
Good third pairing.
That's exactly what he is. Yeah.
Where Evan Bouchard, for some reason, at the end of Tippett's tenure, was getting played down in the third line in favor of Tyson Barrie being with Darnell Nurse, which I don't think is a pairing that makes much logistical sense in my own opinion. Where Evan Bouchard, I thought, was actually playing very well on both ends of the puck for most of the season. He's had his flaws because he's a youngster, but you expect that. Where Tyson Barrie sucks defensively. And Darnell Nurse is getting much better on both ends, but he's not a defensive first defenseman. So that pairing, to me, didn't make any sense. So I think, like he's done with the Condors, pair guys better and kind of get the most out of them in that sense, too, where sometimes this year I would look at your lines and go, what the – like Vince Lombardi, I basically say, "What the hell is going on?"
Nurse has been the most improved player, I think, on the team. He has improved defensively a great deal. I think Bouchard has been between Bouchard and Nurse the best defenseman on the team. Sometime, and then, like I said, it's kind of a train wreck after that. Cece's last couple of weeks have been good, but I still say 5-6, like you say. Keith is hurt, as they say. Oh, good. Hey, Jay, you saw my tweet. Oh, I guess that Twitter does work sometimes when I post my thing. Hey, Jay, how you doing? Yeah, but Keith is hurt, and the sad thing is it doesn't change anything. The guy that I've really liked this year in improvement, maybe he's the most improved, or at least as equal to Nurse, is Lagesson. I think Lagesson's played really well the last couple of games. The last couple of games he's played.
And that has to do with because he goes into the Woodcroft thing, because Woodcroft continued to develop him with the Condors. He's come up, and this is the year he's figured it out at the NHL level, where we talked about this in the past with certain other defensemen and even forwards for that matter, that some guys don't click until they're 25. Other guys do click from 20 to 24. But for some, it doesn't happen. I mean, they click at 25, and then voila, they're a good third-pairing defenseman for the rest of their career, or maybe they're a good second-pairing defenseman, and they even move up from there for the rest of their career. So, yeah, I agree with you on that point for sure. He's been, if I had to put like a top 20, like, impressive, most improved players list this year, he would definitely be on it as one of the standout guys, because I thought he had a chance to be an NHLer, but the way he's been able to come in and kind of lessen the fact that, one, you've had one of the best shot blocking defensemen, Russell, injured a lot, and the fact that he stepped up at times in that category as well, I think is something I wouldn't have expected to the degree he's done that, and that's what you highlighted well there, so I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah. I didn't watch that Vegas game last night. Jay's a Vegas fan. What went wrong? I'm guessing here. Calgary's a really underrated team, and when they come out hot, they're pretty hard to. They probably came out hot and put Vegas back on their heels. And Lehner wasn't having his best night because he hadn't played since the All-Star break, so he was a little rusty, and they potted a couple early, and then Vegas couldn't come back. That would be my guess. I haven't watched it, but that would be my guess. I had Calgary to win last night for those reasons. Like, Sutter teams are amazing coming off of a break. Like, there's not too many coaches that prepare their team better than Sutter. What I am mad at myself for is that I didn't take the Islanders, because Barry Trotz is known for the same thing over Vancouver. But Sutter is amazing at having this team.
That would have been a tough one, though, so I don't blame you for being caught in the crosshair. Not crosses, caught in the, like, in between with that one, because you have two coaches that are top-notch between Vancouver and New York there, because you obviously have Boudreaux, and then you have Trotz. Yeah. So I'll really blame you for that one, for sure, because that one was one that would be a really tough back and forth, I think, for most people.
Yeah, Bruce Boudreaux is probably the most underrated coach of this generation. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. He gets a lot of flack because he hasn't been able to do it in the playoffs, but he brought teams to the playoffs that shouldn't even have been there. So it's yeah.
Some teams have done it, but like not everybody turns into the Canadians when they just found lightning in a bottle and now are what they are.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah.
Not everybody's
right. Give him time with Vancouver and we'll see how it is. And he's just a guy you root for. The guy's funny. He's entertaining. I love the guy. I just love the guy. Okay, so I would have loved if the Oilers would have called him up. Wouldn't that have been nice instead of Tippett, having Boudreaux there? His style of play with this team, that would have been great. But
well, that's also why I think in turn you guys and Edmonton fans, if Edmonton fans would like Woodcroft, because Woodcroft is more of a youngster that knows how to get the most out of his offense and also coach defense pretty solid. But like, if I had to put the thing he's A+ at doing, it's pulling the most out of offensive players, and then he's B+ or A- at coaching defense, and he'll probably bring on a different coach, or if he likes the guys that are already there, that is more just known for doing that. But I think that's why you guys are really going to like him there, because of the points you just said. I feel like he's a coach that is kind of a younger version of Bruce that is not to the same degree of his motivational strategies as Bruce, where he's like the funny comedian guy sometimes, but like more to the sense of he's going to get the most out of his offense and push the pace and kind of do what Hines is doing that some people don't like, but like tell these guys that you gotta don't try to lay a hit like you saw Dave Schultz do in his prime, like you were saying earlier, but just kind of knock guys off the puck, play a little bit more with a little bit more grit out there, and in turn that's going to make our offense fire on more cylinders. He's been that type of coach at the AHL level, so I don't think he's going to change that.
Hard on the stick. Anticipation. I don't get to see the practices that coaches do, but there's a lot of coaches you can just tell that there is a ton of practice on becoming a unit. Like if you look at Dean Evison in Minnesota in the offensive zone, those guys know where each other are all over the ice. Like they know where each other are all the time. That's coaching. That's coaching for sure.
That's actually a perfect comparison. I would say actually more even Dean Evison in the way he's so strategically good at putting guys in position, I would say is probably honestly because that's what I was saying. Your team Bakersfield, if I wouldn't have picked them to be in third, competing with Ontario and Stockton for this year, I would have picked them to be in the playoffs potentially, but more as the 6th seed is the last team to be in it if you just look at the roster on paper. Where now they're performing as a team that's competing with potentially 2 of the better teams in the league. So like, I feel like he's going to do that like Evison does and get the most out of guys because he knows, 1, how to motivate them rightly in the locker room, but 2, which is the most important thing, how to put them in the best position to succeed on the ice via pairings that kind of mesh, like you were just saying, because that's what he's done for Bakersfield, and he seems to have. I don't know how they practice, but just from watching their games on AHL TV, he seems to have that Everson coaching style because everybody seems to always be in the right location, even if they haven't done that for the whole rest of their career when they're on Bakersfield. So it's like it seems like he is very good at doing that, just like Everson has been. So I feel like that's actually probably a better comparison.
Yeah. So yeah, Mark brings up a really good point here. This better work.
This is the last one.
This better work. This is enough of coaching changes, like over and over and over again. There is something systematic. Like it's getting to the point where and we're going to get into Philly here too because we're both Philly fans as well, and there's a lot going on there. And I also want to talk about the Montreal change, but it's getting to the point here where an owner has to look at himself and the organization and realize there's something systematically wrong here. If we cannot find the correct coaches at the correct time, take general manager changes over and over and over again, and everything we do doesn't work, there's something going on. Like this is it, right? This has got to work. You can't.
No, this is, I would say, the last one, and that's why I think, because of what Peyton said too in our group, and all the things I highlighted on here about how good he is at offensively, putting people in strategic position, I think as long as they allow him to get the defensive-minded guy, which he's, like I said, he can coach defensive too, but he's first and foremost the offensive stuff. If they allow him to get the coaches he wants and allow him to have that, that's a big thing. If they just say you have to stick with this, then that's a completely different situation. But if they allow him to kind of get his own guys and do what he wants to do there, I think just like he was able to do with the Condors when he brought in people that he wanted or kept people with others, I think he's going to be able to have a very good system come up. And the best part of this is that they already know a lot of these guys that were young. They already have played. They already know his tendencies, so they're going to come in and be the most comfortable as they can be in terms of not in terms of being overly comfortable to not play well on the ice, but in terms of knowing what he's bringing. And I think that goes a long way as well. It's now more just on Ken Holland to actually get off of his butt and get Woodcroft the players he needs in order to be able to do what he needs to do. Because right now, like you said, this team might get bounced in the first round if they are able to even get in with how inconsistent they've been, since obviously there's a chance that might not even happen if there's too many inconsistencies.
Oh no, there's another one. The Brad Marchand hit. We'll have to talk about that as well. That's why there's a lot. That's why we have 2 times people here, because there's a lot to talk about. That being said, I mean, there's a lot of challenges in Edmonton, no doubt about it, for bringing people in. It is difficult. It really, really, really is. There's people that.
This is my thing, though.
It's not.
Like, we've talked about. We talked about this before, and I'll ask you again because I know what your take was on before, but because of the weather in Edmonton and the fact that it's not the most lively nightlife city, obviously,
to say the least.
Yeah. But my thing is, like, if I was a really good hockey player, I like those facets of life too. Don't get me wrong. Like, I would not like to be bored out of my mind when not playing the game. But the thing is, if I'm playing with 2 of the best players on the planet, and a guy that's a very good defenseman that Bouchard developing, and you're probably going to eventually get goaltending, and Skinner's probably going to be a very solid backup. Like if you're starting to build the threads there and see it, I feel like that would draw me to Edmonton just for that.
That's what everybody thought, but people still aren't lining up to the turnstiles. I'll tell you to come in. But
that's why I'm saying, why do you think that is? Do you think that goes back to the top-down culture thing? People don't like the culture in the organization more than they don't like the product they're putting out.
Well. Yeah, I mean, yes, there's another one too. All of this gets around, right? If there's a cultural problem in there, and I mean, Taylor Hall said a lot of things about Taylor Hall when he was left. Right or wrong, I don't know, but there seems to be some sort of cultural issue. Now, I think that's the reason why Kenny Holland was brought in, because you can say whatever you want about what his at the end of his tenure in Detroit. Nobody there would say that Detroit was not a room that you wanted to be in. That was a family atmosphere in Detroit. And he helped create that, which I think he's trying to do here in Edmonton. And if he does, maybe we do start seeing people coming here. But prior to Kenny Holland, there did seem to be some disconnect with players there. Whatever that may be, like I said, you look at both sides. Let's take somebody like Taylor Hall, okay? Taylor Hall apparently was a loudmouth. He was very sarcastic, and he wasn't a very good captain. That's basically on one side of the envelope. You hear that, okay? Let's say that was the case. A lot of players out there would say, well, why did they allow this to happen, to have a captain like that for so long, okay? Now, let's say that it's not the case and it was just a bunch of murmur going on, a very strong rumor, and you would say, why would they say that about their player and nobody step up and talk about it? You see what I mean? Like, either way, they didn't handle things well, no matter how you look at it. And then they end up trading him for Larson. I'll tell you, when they made that trade for Hall for Larson, the rest of the league went up and went like, are you freaking kidding me? There was nobody in the league that thought that was a good move. Nobody. So players see all of these sort of things. Look at what Chiarelli did. After you see them bumble for 10 years, then you take in the cold and all that stuff like that. Okay, now they have McDavid, but I think they just need to see it, and somehow they're not going to see it unless it happens. So it's possible that the only thing we have here in Edmonton is to do what Holland is doing, and that is he's not giving up his first picks or nothing for nothing. He's going to try to draft. You're looking at 2-3 years down the road. He's going to try to draft players that he believes want to be here, want to stay here, and build a culture that way. I think that, I think maybe Holland might have a point that you might not have a choice. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I think him being in here, Ken Holland is obviously a good option to have as your general manager. We were talking about the culture thing because of what you just said about Detroit. The problem is, you talked about the top-down effect. Is he going to be allowed to have that much freedom and free will to allow that to happen? And is Woodcroft going to, in turn, then by the domino effect, be allowed to have the freedom, like I said before, where he then has the ability to get the guys he wants to be able to do everything I said in this video. So that's the big question for me.
Okay, hopefully you guys can hear him now. I think I had something not switched on, but okay, good. Yeah, so good points as well. There we go. Okay, good. Sorry about that, guys. I'm surprised you could hear him at all, actually, but I'm glad you could. So, yeah, all good points. I think that's about as far. Winnipeg's having the same problem, by the way. You know, they got a little bit of an advantage in Winnipeg because they're closer to Toronto, and there's a lot of Toronto players from Ontario. If you notice in their lineup, they have a lot of players from Ontario. Dylan went there. And people said, well, why couldn't we get Dylan? Well, because we're further away from Toronto, and he's from Ontario, right? So they have that advantage. The reason why we got Duncan Keith, and I don't like what we gave up for Duncan Keith, but the only reason why we really got him is we're close to Vancouver. And that's where his daughter lives, right? So we're not the best situated place in the world as far as advantages in any way. Like, most of our population is in Ontario. Most of the players that are from Canada are from Ontario. And if they can't play in Toronto, they could see themselves in Winnipeg because they are, maybe half an hour to 1 hour flight to see their parents and all of that sort of thing like that, right? So that's an advantage. So those are just some of the reasons why Edmonton is just not the sexiest city in the world. I can't say it enough. Winnipeg isn't either. People like going to Vancouver. It's bigger. The mountains are right there. It's beautiful. All of those sort of things like that. There's more to do there. Edmonton could do itself a big favor in general by just making it a reason to come here. And we have the money to do it, but we never do it. Okay. Good. You can hear clearly now. Right on. So what do we want to get into now? We're going to get into Philadelphia at the end. Okay. But the first one that was brought up was the Montreal deal. And I'm sorry, I can't, me personally, I'll pass it to you. I have very little judgment of Ducharme as a coach. So I can't really judge Ducharme as a coach based on what he had to work with. What about you?
Oh yeah. I'm not gonna for me, I'm not going to judge him harshly and think he doesn't have a chance. Like the few people, I don't think there's a lot of people either, because I think the people that really enjoy talking about hockey and are really zoned in, like everyone that watches this show and you and I, don't have this opinion. But you see some stuff in the awful sphere of Twitter and Facebook at times that this guy, he's just a failure of a head coach. Well, then why, as an interim, was he able to do what he did in order to earn the job to stick to it? Like you can, like they wouldn't have just handed him that if he was a failure of a head coach. So I think he's a guy that falls into the perfect category of what you said. Is he just was in a crap hole of a situation? You have Carey Price that rightfully so stepped away from the team to deal with his stuff and is now closer, at least it seems, to working his way back. And you have Shea Weber, who only had his last hurrah and is now done. So I like he just was put in a bad spot. And then Dvorak hasn't worked out as well as I think they would have hoped. So like you have different things that just didn't fit into place for them. Morton St. Louis, it is he's going to be a good interim, I think, though, because they wanted to obviously have somebody that spoke both languages. Check. And obviously everybody said about Marty having to work his way up to even be the great NHL Hall of Famer player he was how great he knew the game, because obviously he was passed over by everybody. So I think he has a chance to be a very good head coach, and we'll see what he does here. But Ducharme, I think, in turn, is going to be a good, at least, assistant for somebody very soon, if not get another opportunity where people, I think, are going to see this for what it is, which is just he was in a crapshoot of a situation.
Yeah, well, he's going to land on his feet. I mean, you don't step in. You got to remember, he stepped in a very difficult situation where a guy like Shea Weber was publicly saying there was a problem in the room, right? And that was
that's true too. Yeah, that's a good point.
And with a very, maybe possibly a Hall of Famer coach in what's his name?
Claude Julien.
Julien, right? This is no slouch of a coach he's taken over for, who was having a difficult time with whatever the situation was, turned him around and got him, and they were going through a slump at the moment. So at the very least, he must have been some sort of a good motivator or whatever to get to where they were. Also, we have a guy on here called Hockey News Reports that comes on all the time, and I don't know too many people that know the Canadians better than he does, and he was like, Ducharme's going to be great and all of those sort of things like that, and I was like, okay, dude, and he was. So he did what he did. He got him they went to the finals. You can say Price got him there, and I would say that he certainly did. But
I think Ducharme has a chance to be what Gabe Kapler, to turn it back to baseball, since people brought up, we talked about it earlier, and then people brought it up in the chat real quick to make a comparison. What Gabe Kapler was to the Phillies. He didn't get put in the best spot. He had some success where he first came in and brought them closer to where they then fell off in the final month of the season. So you were seeing sprinklings, but he never got fully there, and that's also because they never built the full team you needed around him. Where then he went to the Giants, who didn't necessarily have a full team around, but they had veterans who have been there and done that. And he's been able to figure it out. If you give Ducharme a similar team that kind of maybe hasn't pulled their full weight, but has veterans that have been there and done that, he probably will get those guys, similar to how he did with the Canadians, to play their best selves, even though they might be towards the tail end of their career rather than the beginning of it, just like he did with the Shea Webers in that run.
And like I said, you're using Montembeault as your number one goaltender. I mean,
yeah, it's not going to get. Where Sam Montembeault, I don't think he's like we pick on him more because he is the number one goaltender.
Yeah.
Where I don't think he's a terrible
No, but
goaltender by any stretch. It's
come on.
just he should not be your
He's
starter.
it wasn't
That's
in the well. He should certainly not be a starter or playing a regular in behind of a defense in the situation that they were in. Like Molten Bull's probably going to be one of those late bloomer guys that could be a good backup. I'm not. He's big. When he's good, when he's on, he looks really good. And if he can get that consistently, he's going to look good. It's just a really bad situation for him to try to be building his way into the NHL. Really, right?
No, yeah, it's all about trying to figure it out at the next level for Montembeau. But like the similar, like Charlie Lindgren came up for the Blues this year, obviously played really well, and a lot of that has to go with what you just said. Greg Berube runs a flawless defensive system, and they have the guys to be able to do that as well. Montreal didn't have that, so I think that goes in a long part where if he played there, you probably would have already saw better numbers at this juncture. It all goes into how the team, like you were saying, plays in front of you, where sometimes goaltenders, we tend to rip on them too much. When you go back and look at the game tape, you're like, well, actually, their defense was Swiss cheese. So, they really didn't have as much of an opportunity to do anything.
And as far as St. Louis goes, I think this is basically, I'm not sure they really plan on him to be the coach long term. But one thing that I think they do want, I think St. Louis is going there for basically bringing pride back into that room again. That's what I think. I think the pride has gone out of, and it's sad to watch. We're talking about the most storied organization, probably even more than the Leafs in the NHL, and it's really not. It's not fun to watch Montreal not care, and it's gotten to the point where it looks like they don't care. And you bring in a guy like St. Louis, personally, I thought maybe it might have been Richardson, but if somebody like St. Louis is going to go in there, I don't even think he's going to care too much about winning and losing right now. But you better have pride. You better be courageous out there, and you better play for that.
Better all, yeah. Basically, you better all play like Brendan Gallagher.
Well, and poor Brendan Gallagher watching this. This is a guy who has, sacrificed everything for this organization. It must be just painful. I wouldn't even doubt if it was some Brendan Gallagher, actually another guy that just came back into the lineup. I always forget his name, but he's a heart and soul guy too. And I wouldn't doubt if he was part of the reason why that they decided to go this way. Because we remember Gorton said he was going to keep the coach until the end of the year, right? Paul Byron.
Yeah, he did.
Paul Byron.
Originally, Byron. Yeah, okay, yeah, he's a heart and soul. Yeah, he's a heart and soul guy. He's only played 2 games this year. He hasn't been healthy, but yeah, I would agree.
Injuries have been a problem, but I mean, the reason why injuries is a problem is this guy sacrifices his body for the blue, white, and blue.
And he's small. He's not a big guy. He's not a big guy that sacrifices his body either. Paul Byron, he's 5'9". So is Gallagher. They're both smaller guys that throw their body around.
I have a feeling he might have come back and said, "Okay, you know what? Ducharme's just not able to say the things needed to get these guys to play with pride. It's not really a take. Sometimes, like Paul Maurice has been around long enough that he just realized that there wasn't an angle he could do anymore, right, for the Winnipeg Jets. And I think that maybe Ducharme hasn't been around long enough to know, or on the same note, doesn't want to give up. And a guy like Paul Byron just came back the last 2 games and might have went up to management and said, Ducharme, it's just not working right now. We got to find somebody that can come in here and bring some pride back into this room. And so they take a guy like St. Louis. This guy, St. Louis, I don't know if you remember in Tampa Bay. I mean, this guy doesn't pull any punches. He says what he wants to say. He wears his...
Oh, yeah.
He's not going to worry about hurting anyone's feelings or anything like that doing this. Yeah.
Well, that's why I wouldn't be surprised if Marty St. Louis is a guy which is kind of taking shots immediately at other people on the team. But if he comes in and says, see how Brendan Gallagher, see how Paul Byron, and for that matter,
even another guy that'll lay his body out but is bigger, isn't playing the best season. Armia will lay his body out for his team. See how these guys will lay their body out for the team. I need you to do that. And even if you're not playing those massive hits, just what we went back to saying earlier, you just need them to hit them off of the puck hit and play with more play with where it looks like you have more, like you use pride, so I use like gusto where it looks like you have more, you're giving more of a hoot of where like sometimes it looks like the Canadians this season, if your name's not Brandon Gallagher, or Mia's had his moments. Jake Evans has impressed me at moments this year, and then Nick Suzuki's great, so he's Nick Suzuki. But like if you're not like them, you really need to pull your weight. Where Nick Suzuki, we know, is not going to start hitting people, so I don't expect that necessarily. But like, you need the rest of these guys to play with more heart, like the Gallaghers and the Byrons do. Because even someone like Josh Anderson, yes, he has 16 points this year, which is all fine and dandy. But I've watched a decent handful, I would say at least like 10 to 12 Canadian games this year, and in none of them have I thought Josh Anderson has been as physical as he could be with the way that Josh Anderson's built.
It's
So
the only
like,
thing he can really do. He's not great defensively. He's got to be playing a physical game, or he's basically useless. And
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, he has like 16 points, which is fine and dandy. But if he's not doing the physical side to the degree he's supposed to be doing, it's what you said. Like, he's more of just a straight up fourth liner at that point, and then you're paying a fourth liner what, $7 million? No, $5 million. Yeah, $5.5 million. So that's not really great.
Those sort of things just sort of snowball, right? A guy like here's the thing: you bring in somebody like St. Louis. I'll tell you, right? I'll tell you. What am I telling? I think the first thing that St. Louis will do is the first time he sees Petrie pout, I'm so sick of watching that guy. Like, seriously, if I was a coach, I would punch him right in the head, and then I'd go up to management and say, "Yeah, okay."
I think
he's being an absolute dick. Sorry, but he is.
This year, Petrie, yeah, he hasn't been playing well. He hasn't carried himself well, but I think part of that does go back to, that's the one thing I think a coach like St. Louis, who's going to say it like it is, actually fares better for a player like that.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, because you'd be better off being told, like, what the bleep are you doing? Get your head out of your rear end. If you're a player like that that's stuck in limbo, like Petrie seems to be, then
he'll paste him to the bench.
Then having a coach. Yeah, or you just bench him a night and then that'll knock him out of it. But you also might not even have to bench him if you're a coach that says stuff sternly, like we've heard St. Louis, like you said, say stuff bluntly during his playing career. That might get it through enough that you don't even have to bench him. You just start seeing the next game he plays to a completely different effect because you knocked it back into him, so to speak, in the right way to do it. So
yeah, like I said, we're not in the room. I don't know what Ducharme was doing, but my take from afar is that he was too nice. And
yeah, that would be my take from afar as well, with the way that team seemed to be in cruise control.
Yeah, and the reason also why I think possibly my take from afar could be accurate in that case is the hiring of St. Louis, because St. Louis is not known for being too nice.
No. And I think also that's sometimes AV was known more for being a let players do as they do type coach, and it kind of goes into, we'll get to the Flyers later, but it kind of goes into that category too of sometimes if you're that type of coach, your whole player's accountable, but the way you hold players accountable doesn't always have as much of an effect as guys that are more stern with them.
Mark Brown asks if St. Louis will stick around. I don't think at this point it's possible. I don't know what his X and O's are like, but I don't think that he's being brought in for the X and O's. I liked what Boudreau said when he came in. He said basically there are things that you have to do before you can put an X and O on the board. And if you're not doing like what we said about Edmonton, and we're going to say what we're saying about Montreal, if you're not hard on the stick, and if you're not beating people to the puck, you might as well not have an
X and Philly. We can definitely say that about Philly.
And Philly too. If If you're not beating people to the puck in a normal circumstances, forget about the fact that maybe you're not anticipating well. That's what X's and O's are for. Okay, just a normal dump in, beat a guy to the puck because you out skate him and out and wanted it more.
You give more. You out effort. Yeah, exactly.
Just
you want
effort
it more than the
alone
guy.
First. If you haven't got that, forget about the X's and O's. It doesn't matter. I don't know what St. Louis' X's and O's are. I think that this is brought in here, I think for this very reason, is they just want to see an effort. And St. Louis, they think, could do a really good job. I mean, he was a great captain. He won, wasn't a captain. Was LeCavalier the captain or was he? I think LeCavalier was.
I think Vinny was. He was the A, but he was still a very great leader.
Probably should have been the captain, honestly, of that team. And he did. He won the Conn Smythe. He was the only one outside of Crosby. I can't remember who they were. There was like 3 or 4 guys that won the Conn Smythe, and he was the only one outside of that because Tampa Bay won that year with Tortorella as a coach. So I think he's a great motivator, and they're going to use him that way. Now, add somewhere in the organization to help Gordon. Oh, do you think he would bring up Woodcroft and Manson? They did bring up Woodcroft and Manson. But anyways,
I think he's asking. I don't think Race fan rocks. I don't think he was here when we talked about the Oilers stuff, so he didn't know. We talked about that already. If you go back in the video, we talked about.
Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought Mark Brown was asking all of that.
We talked about our thoughts on Woodcroft. Manson, I don't know as much about, so I can't really speak to that other than the fact that the Condors, I think, are one of the most well-run, oiled machines of a AHL club, so that would speak well to him also.
Yeah. It might have been, and they might have been, maybe they brought in Tippett knowing that Tippett wasn't going to be there past this term, and they were planning on making Woodcroft the next coach anyways, but they wanted to give him a few more years.
It did seem like they were grooming him. Yeah, it definitely seemed like that.
So it just happened a little earlier than they first expected. But I think St. Louis will probably stay in the Montreal organization. I mean, he's French Canadian. He's from, I believe he's from Montreal. I could be wrong about that, but
let me look. I'll look it up.
But I mean, this is probably a dream job for him. And if he shows that he can get these guys working their bag off,
he's from Laval. How close is Laval to Montreal?
Not far from Montreal. Laval, yeah. So he's from Quebec for sure. So, yeah, I'm sure it's a dream job, and at some capacity they'll keep him. Maybe he's a better X's and O's guy than I'm aware of. It just usually doesn't work out that a guy like St. Louis who hasn't even had an assistant coaching job. So, it's really kind of odd signing in that way.
Yeah, it will be interesting though, because there's a lot of coaches that obviously have been head coaches that are that are out there in the ether right now that are just doing nothing. So, if you bring in St. Louis, who knows the motivation and knows how to speak the talk to get people going, and then you bring in all the great X's and O guys around them, I think that could work. The thing is that going to be what Montreal does? So it's going to be interesting to see what they do going forward when it comes to the rest of the coaches.
It's so tough with Montreal because the coach has to speak French, right? So I don't know where they're going to get the next coach from.
Not all their assistants.
No, but their head coach always does.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying you have to get him the right X's and O's assistants.
Oh, yeah.
Because if he's not the X's and O's, then they do that. And then he takes control of saying all the right things, putting people in the right headspace so they're not down on themselves type of thing, basically. And then putting the lineup out,
like
obviously.
What they did upstairs, where Gorton is really the guy doing everything, and they hired a French person to be able to, who is an agent and can do all that. Gordon's got a beautiful thing going on there. He gets to be the general manager, and he doesn't have to do the thing they like doing the least. Work on contracts. That's the best. You couldn't get a better management job than that. Sweet.
Well, that also goes to play when you're a Canadians team that puts somebody in a position like that. That's more of like he obviously has a lot all of the say, but you have the other GM that speaks to how successful they've been in the past because you're telling them, well, we believe everything of what you're going to build the team, so we're going to bring this other guy in to handle the contracts and be the second opinion. But like you're the top dog. Where that's why I think some people like obviously Drury's been doing his thing and everything, but when he got let go by the Rangers, everybody had the what the heck reaction because he was doing the rebuild fine, and now he's probably going to be perfect for the rebuild in Montreal, and I would say he's the perfect guy in there to be able to build back up their farm system in order to get them to where they want to be and have more guys come up that really impress them going forward, like the Suzuki's of the world or the Romanovs of the world. So
they made it quite clear that it's like they did with the Rangers. That was fairly quick rebuild. Yeah, they're doing it again. So um, the return on these players I think, are probably going to be as many guys that were drafted in the last 2-3 years rather than a pick next year. That's what they're going to be looking for, some gem guys that have been picked in the second round, say in 2019, somewhere around there. That's what he did with the Rangers, and he did very well at it. So I think he'll do that. He'll do that again.
like for Toffoli, you could get somebody
Oh
like
yeah,
that. If you trade Tyler Toffoli, some team would give you somebody like
absolutely.
that to get him in. That's an immediate impact guy, which is someone they're more need than the guy that is going to continue to develop while he's getting his feet wet
I
with
know.
your
I've
team.
had
So
discussions with Montreal because I did the Toffoli video, and now I just did a Sherratt video as well on where he would be traded to. And I had discussions with some Montreal Canadian fans, great fans there on Facebook, and they were like, "Well, we got to keep a guy, a veteran like Toffoli, to work with the young players." And I'm like, "First, you got to get the young players." Then you can go out and get a veteran to work with those young players. If you don't have the young players, then the veterans are really not doing that at all. So,
the other thing is they already have it too. Yeah, and the other thing is they already kind of have that too because I don't see Paul Byron going anywhere before his contract expires. Well, he's a UFA.
and
I think after next
I don't
season.
think Gallagher
So
goes. I don't think so. I
and
don't
yeah,
think
and then
so.
if Gallagher doesn't go, then you already have two leaders that are veterans already. You don't need Tyler Toffoli around where other teams might be able to use that argument more because they would need that said guy around because they don't have the Gallaghers and the natural born locker room leaders, Paul Byron's of the
But I
world.
get their
So
point though. Is like there's not too many, and we've seen it with Philadelphia. There is a value to having a guy like Toffoli who can score, who is a shooter. They can show the young guys how to be
Mhm.
shooters, and there is a value to that. But I'm afraid the value of a guy like Toffoli right now, who's on a really good contract, at this deadline when they want to do a retool, he might be the only one they have that can get a player that's ready to play right now, like right close to right now.
Yeah, and the difference is even though TK struggled, and this year he was three straight 24-goal seasons, the Canadians don't have, if they're not going to trade a Gallagher, they don't have a Travis Konechny equivalent to fall back on if we're going to compare it to Foley to Atkinson. So like they don't have that where that's their different thing. That's why I think they would have to trade to Foley more so as well.
Yeah, yeah, I think he's pretty much good as gone. I don't know what the value of Petrie is. I think Sherrod will pot you
The
first.
Leafs want Luke Shen.
I don't know. Whitechel is, I think, says a lot of these things because he desperately wants Toronto to improve their defense, and I don't know if they can have Luke Shen, but I mean, yeah, that's not going to improve them at all. So I doubt that's the case. Um, but yeah, I think they'll get a first and stuff like that, and then that'll be about it. I think those three guys: Petrie, Sherratt, Toffoli, and I mean Jorlan is injured again. I don't know. Is that guy really gonna make it? He's I don't know.
Jonathan
Drouin,
Drouin.
yeah. I don't know if he's gonna make it.
Uh
Dvorak is not. They'll never get the value from Dvorak probably that they gave up for him.
Yeah. Well, the sad part is Druan actually this year, if I remember correctly, from listening to Spitting Chicklets and different podcasts I listened to, I'm pretty sure he was actually playing half decent, and
No,
then he just
he
has got
was.
yeah
Yeah, he
he
was for sure.
yeah 20 points in 32 games yeah so he just is in the unfortunate category of he can't stay on the ice, which sucks, because he actually was playing well. Obviously Davis Savard, he might end up getting traded again in his career if he gets healthy in
Yeah.
time.
Oh, Savard could be.
So
You're not.
yeah, so you have different
You're
things
not
there.
getting much for him
Um,
now, though. Oh, Lehkonen.
no, probably not.
Lehkonen
Probably
will be
not.
traded. That's what I've heard too.
You might not get much for Savard, but at the same time, it kind of goes back to the conversation we were having in text, which is I don't think you should get much for Savard, but the trade market, you, Pearlo, you and I know, doesn't go by what you and I think. It goes by what history usually is served, which is teams have overpaid for right shot
Yeah,
defense.
I just think that he's kind of wore that for now.
He might have wore that out. Yeah, he might have wore out his time frame of being in that overpaid phase. But we'll have to see, because righty defensemen are the guys that teams will go, we'll give you a little bit extra of an arm and a leg for, and I don't always agree with it. And that sometimes gets you into a hole, like, for example, with a certain team that we're also familiar with.
Which
But
we'll be talking about later. Yeah, but Lehkonen will probably, he'll probably get, if they work Lehkonen well enough, they might get a second and a prospect out of him. I personally think that if he would be on my radar if I was a general manager, I still think that guy's got a lot to give. He's got a playoff style. And he's young still. He's going to be a restricted free agent, but I don't think he's going to command a lot of money. I think they might get some pretty good value at a guy like Lehkonen. But I can understand why you would move him.
Lehkonen also, I actually wasn't even thinking about him as a trade piece, but that's a good point, because he also would fit into the retool teams where, like, teams that are already good would want him, but teams like the Flyers, for example, that are trying to get new heads in there and old ones out, would probably also be interested in a guy like Artturi Lehkonen because of what you just said. He's still growing and ascending at 0.5 or 0.45, points per game this year. He might end up being, maybe he will end up being 0.54 points per game at some point of his career, since I accidentally said that as the first thing. So he'll keep ascending and do better, and that's something that those teams want just as much as the already ready to compete teams want. So he opens a whole realm of possibilities when you trade him, where I think any team would really want him, because he's still ascending, as you said, and hasn't even hit his full peak yet.
Yeah, I don't think he really got a real fair shake in Montreal. For some reason, they just didn't seem to want to, like, he keeps on showing offense from those lower lines. Now, that being said, there are guys that really only produce offense when you have them in the lower lines, because they get to expose a few of the lesser players on the other team. You try to match them up to the fourth line and stuff like that. And I think you can make a case that Lehkonen is a lot like that. But somebody will probably, another guy that's kind of like that was Raffle in Philadelphia. Was sort of like that. He put up more offense when you played him in the bottom six than he usually did in the top six. But when you put him in the right situation where he's like a piece that just sort of assists a couple guys, I think he could put up more offense than he does. I don't think they got full value out of Lehkonen. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
And I would agree with that, and I think he'll do well elsewhere. And this is a season he's really starting to tick up, so it would be the best time to get the best value for him. Also,
okay. So, would Gallant be able to make Anderson play physically? I mean, possibly, dude, but I really wouldn't want. Personally, I wouldn't want. I think Anderson is way overrated. Way overrated. He's terrible defensively. He is good for a guy that can he can.
Are we talking about if the Rangers trade for Josh? We're talking about if they trade for Josh Anderson, right?
Okay. He's making a lot of money. He can put up some offense in. He can put up some offense, about probably 0.5 points per game, maybe something like that in the right situation.
Maybe,
But
yeah.
he's sort of all over the place, and he plays like a fourth line guy, but he's got a top six shot. I think that's the best way to put it. And he will drive to the net, and he does create havoc. But in doing so, a lot of the time he gives up the puck too much. He overplays his check too much. He leaves himself out of position a lot.
Yeah, he gets out of position.
He leaves himself out of position a lot. It just wouldn't be a guy that I'd be trying to grab personally. But, could Gallant, I'm sure Gallant could get him to play physical. Gallant is doing a hell of a job with that team in New York, I think. So they've improved a lot since the beginning of the year. But I just personally wouldn't be in on him myself. I don't know what you'd want to give up for him because he's making $5 million, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like you would have to fit him in cap structure wise to the guys that you're not just paying now, but you're going to have to pay in the future. And personally, I just don't think that's going to work the best, and he's going to just work out the best structurally into the team for what they would have to give up, because you already have guys that play physical in the Ryan Reeves. You have the Julian Gauthiers, the Barclay Goodrows. Dryden Hunt has been their Swiss Army knife type player.
Blay, if he ever comes back. And
Blay,
Kakko is a lot more physical than people give him credit for. That kid's going to be great. Don't worry about Kakko. Kakko is going to be fine. No doubt about it.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, he will he lays on those. He's really good at what you said, where you don't always lay on the big old school check, but you can kind of knock the guy off the puck. Kakko can knock guys off.
He's like a Palat in Tampa Bay, I think. I compare him a lot to a guy like Palat in Tampa Bay. So, okay, cool. That's cool. Right on, Mark. Thanks for I hope that helps you out. Yeah, I don't think Anderson would be your best bet there, but I think New York's going to be looking for, I don't know, they don't seem to want to pay Strome what Strome wants to get paid. So I think they're going to be looking for a center.
Which is interesting since Ryan, which is kind of interesting since Ryan Strome had his best success with the Rangers. Unless if it's obviously he gets paid 4 or 5 now. So unless if he's asking for like 7, 5, like if he's asking for like 5.75 from his 4.5 raise, I don't see why they have a problem with that, because I think he's done his best stuff with the Rangers. I wouldn't have a problem with that if I was the Rangers. But if he's asking for some like 7.8, almost $8 million contract, then yeah, that might be it.
7.5, and that probably would be just a little rich for me.
Okay. Yeah, that's a little bit high for a guy that's like the 0.79 points per game, paying them in that number, where you don't see as many guys get paid in the double digits nowadays. Those contracts are more from before than you see guys currently get paid in the double digits, unless if you're just one of the GOATs. I think, yeah, now that you pay in that 7 to 8 category, that's more usually the like A- tier guys at this point of how the pay scales work in my own view, where I would say Ryan Strome, I love him as a player. Like I've already talked about how much I love the Strome family, but I would probably put him in the B+ category of hockey players, which you don't necessarily want to pay them 7.5 to 8 or 7 to 8 million. You would rather pay those guys 6.5 or less, and then you're happy with your contract and very happy with the production, because Ryan Strome's playing great. It's just you can't overpay him because of what he's doing, because that's just going to only hurt your team in the future. It's a business, and it's a business on two sides. He wants his money, but they have to pay him the right value for what they see him as being, which is at most he's usually like a 0.79 to like a 0.85 at times when he's on a run. Points per game player. It's not like he's a points per game guy, and those are the guys you tend to pay 8 or more.
I think what's happening here is, this is just my lean, is that he is not willing to sign a contract now. He wants to test the market, and then they have to decide, do we want to take a chance that we're going to lose him for nothing? And they could include him in, say, something for Hurdle, if they talk to their agent and say, look, we'll sign you up to 7. Hurdle might be a guy they might be more interested in signing for that kind of money. Whatever. That's a very complicated situation there. And I don't blame Strome. I mean, Strome wants to be the best he can be. he probably believes he can be a number one center. I don't agree with him, but if I were him, I would believe I could be too, because that's how.
Yeah, that's the mentality you want your guy to have.
Exactly. That's right. So the very mentality that he has is creating problems, because the truth of the matter is Strome is probably not a number one center, never will be. And I agree. Something in this.
He's just a very good number two, and that's what falls. Like, for example, he's a guy that if they don't get anything, and he's a UFA, so if he falls into free agency in terms of retooling, a guy that actually has developed well with the Flyers this year in the minors with Lappy, the first year he's taken a big jump, has been his brother Matthew, and the Flyers have also been linked a little bit to Dylan. I wouldn't be surprised if they grab one of the brothers, and Ryan would obviously be the more developed of the two, where they have connections to the franchise, where I think they would fit into the retooling quickly that Dave Scott was trying to say category, because they're kind of those hidden. Well, Ryan Strome's not a hidden gem, but Dylan Strome, with the way he's been picking up his play lately, his kind of more into those hidden gem that people potentially underrate category. That if you bring him in, that kind of fits into the quicker retool strategy that he was trying to preach. Where, hell, if you get both of them, I could care less. Either have the family reunited. That's fine, too.
The other Strome he's pig-headed with his skating. No, that's the issue. It seems to be wherever he goes.
He was. Now he's actually not. He was, which is good. Where I would like to actually talk to Dylan and Ryan to see what they think of how he's progressed, because obviously they're the ones that first said that. But I think they would probably even agree with the way that even when you talk to coaches or anything about him, like they said, he has grown as being, he knows he's not going to be the quickest skater, he's more of a strider, but he's grown at working at how to be a good strider, if that makes sense, rather than just being picks up as little space as possible, which it was his issue. Where Dylan wasn't that. It was more he got rushed into the league and wasn't able, I feel, to develop his skating to the full effect at the AHL level like he should have been given. Where Matthew was more the mindset thing that now I think he's starting to have the right mindset. So he's more of a guy I think will get caught up as like an NHL overager, maybe to get a cup of coffee at like the age of 26, like 27, something like that, as he continues to develop, just because of he had to change his mindset, and that kind of is what, like you were saying, cost him a couple years.
Yeah, and then after saying all of this, it just could be posturing. They both could definitely be signing. They could be signing Ryan, and it's just posturing for the price that they're going to get. Like maybe it's like maybe he pushes himself up into the 6.8. You know what I mean? Something like that. Extra $300,000 a year. That's $300,000 a year. And then, of course, the term. He's 28 years old. Do you want to go till 35 with Strome? He's 28. He's really what he is now. He's a 60-point guy. And this is a really good question, Mark. I mean, good statement, I should say. It's not a question. Is how much is Strome what he is because he's with Panarin? Like, you throw Strome in with your average guy, like Panarin's not average. Is he going to put up those?
He was good before Panarin, though. Yeah, he would as soon as he went to the Rangers, Strome, from the Edmonton, where he didn't work out as well for your Oilers, he has been good from the jump, and then he's obviously had a 50-point season way back with the Islanders. So he's been good in his career separate from Artemi. Has he been necessarily a .79 to a .85 guy consistently? No, not necessarily, but if you can get 0.7 points or like 0.68 out of him as a very consistent guy that's got better through his years as a two-way player that is hard on the stick, like we were talking about those types of players earlier, that's good as well. So I don't think his success is necessarily tied to Panarin. Is his peak success that we're seeing tied to Panarin? That might be, but his success in general, I don't think that's tied to Panarin.
My lean, no, that's true. I mean, he's certainly better with Panarin. But my lean is here. I think they're hard on Hurdle. Hurdle's more of a bull in a china shop type player, that he plays more physical than Strome does, and he just has that more of an edge to his game. And you could make a case he may be a little better two-way. He's going to cost more, but I think they don't mind the cost as much for the value that they're getting out of somebody like Hurdle. I think that they're going to be going after Hurdle, and Strome's going to either be part of something like that or move on from here. And for him, if he does move on, a 60-point second line center, somebody may push 7 for him. I don't know who it might be, but somebody may push 7 and a bit for Strome. I think that would be a mistake, but they may. They may.
I definitely wouldn't give that tenure. Like I was saying, I would have interest in him if he came to my team more for like a 4-year, maybe for 28, 5-year deal, tenure wise, and not necessarily for 7.5, probably at most for 7, and I still wouldn't love that. It would be more, I would want it like 6.5 lower, but yeah, he's definitely someone that I think is going to have a lot of interest because teams that are willing to try to have the quicker retools are going to have interest in guys like Ryan Strome, because even though he might be asking for more because he has a mentality of he thinks he can be the first line guy like we were talking about, well, he's still not going to be getting paid as much as the A++ guys that are available. So you're still saving money there. So when teams look at it from that perspective, retooling teams might pay him $7 million because they're like, well, we're going to get 0.7 to 0.68 points from him per game compared to 0.85 from this guy that we might have to pay 9, where he wants more just because he's been good, but he's more up and down and had a great season last year that brought his point total up to that, where before he's been more what Strome's been. So it's like that I think kind of stuff weighs in as well.
Like a team like the Calgary Flames, I could see them ponying up that kind of money. By the way, they're both from my hometown, Mississauga, Ontario, where I was born.
The Stromes are?
Yeah.
The Stromes are? Yeah. I felt like I remembered that from when Jamie and I were talking about it, and I did a piece on them about the Stromes, where I remember saying the family hailing from, and then talking about how every one of them is related and stuff. But yeah, that's pretty cool to have a connection to a whole hockey fan. I mean, I think literally Ryan's just going to be a guy that controls his own destiny at this point because he's a UFA. It's not like he's a restricted free agent. Like, they can trade him, but then when he gets traded somewhere else, it's not like he has to sign with that team if he doesn't want to. So if he goes to the Sharks for Tomas Hertl and he doesn't want to stay in San Jose, now he might want to because they're trending in a fairly decent direction. But and they have pretty nice beaches and settings out in San Jose. But that's beside the point. If he doesn't, then he has the free will to go anywhere else because he's a UFA, not an RFA. When I'm 95% sure his brother and Dylan is an RFA. I might be wrong, though.
I think it makes sense only if Hertl doesn't want to go there. Otherwise, you just sign Hertl, right? If Hertl doesn't want to stay there because of whatever reason and he would prefer to go to New York, then the agents, you can talk to Strome's agent, come over, whatever. And then maybe you do get his brother, and you know they could really use some young players there, and they would be probably willing to give his brother a shot to learn how to skate a little better and stuff like that. San Jose's got some rough sledding ahead of them with their contract.
Well, I actually think what's his name has been doing. That's why I've been impressed with Derek King, because I think Derek King, not to go too much onto the sidetracking with the Blackhawks, but Derek King's actually done that because he's given him a lot of first-line minutes, which is what's brought Stromer up to what he's had now, which is like, I think, 20 points in the season, has played a lot more confident and looks a lot more confident out there. And that's going to, in turn, get him better at skating because when you have more confidence, it helps everything, obviously. So I think Derek King, compared to Colleton, really has helped him. I think it also goes with not just what he's done on the ice for him. He's probably set something behind the scenes that's worked for him as well. But, like, I think whatever he's doing, it's been working where he's just been heightening his trade value ever since Derek King's come in, where if they want to trade him because he's an RFA, so he has controllability. So usually RFAs that are trending up have more value just because of that. So I feel like he might, at this point, from some team, even get you that third, even maybe if you're a team that's trying to retool and you're going, well, Dylan Strome equals the value of a second round pick. then you would say, well, we'll give him a second round pick because we already know what he is and he's just going to get better as we develop his skating. Where if you pick a second round pick, it's more of a shot in the dark, and then you're working with the whole, like, what is it, 20% or 15 percentile thing of the guys that make the league and end up being great players type thing. So, like, you kind of know what you have already, and then you can develop it further if you get a guy
Yeah,
like Dylan.
I think San Jose's got some difficult decisions ahead of them, and I don't even know what to do with that organization. But that wouldn't be a bad idea. But okay, well, now we'll get into the Philadelphia Flyers and all the stuff that's going on in Philadelphia. Um, we talked about coaches in Montreal. We talked about coaches uh, in Edmonton and the challenges that they've had. And now we got Mike Yo there, and we had, like, basically the reason why you're on is we had a discussion and maybe disagreement about the direction that Philadelphia. I haven't liked Philadelphia's direction since they let Hextall go. I liked the direction that Hextall was going. I'm not sure that I liked Hextall himself, but I was more concerned with the fact that they didn't go that direction. Like, if you wanted to let Hextall go, fine, but find somebody like Gorton to continue doing what he was doing but a different human doing it. But that's not what they did. They brought in a yes man like Jeff Fletcher and said, now go out and get, replace Niskanen and try to make everything good again. And I didn't like it.
I don't think the ownership telling Fletcher, like, that's why I don't necessarily put it as much on Chuck as you do, because if I had my owner telling me you have to do X, Y, and Z, that's, to me, that's understood as if you don't do X, Y, and Z, your ass is on the street. So, like that's more why, with the whole getting all the players to build around Hayes and AV and everything, I think was more coming from the top down, like, appease this guy that's been one of the best head coaches in the league. And that just didn't work out. Where when it comes to the draft, ever since Fletcher came in, he deals with the draft, but he's even said it himself in some quotes. He's not as hands on with the draft because that's more Brett Flair's side of things, where he lets his assistant GM kind of handle, and then Danny, that's going to be more Danny's side of things since he's a very good player development, and that he's been already assessing talent since he's worked with the Maine Mariner. But I think that'll be those two street, and then Fletcher kind of just lays his input. That's why I think, in terms of continuing the streak, the Flyers, when you talk to, like, and get a feel for people inside the organization, they kind of have continued Hextall's analytic thing. It's just have the directness to it. That's not really his thing. He delegates maybe more than other people would because maybe he has more trust in people. I don't know why. But, like, Flair is more the guy that is the draft dude. And then I think the secondary guy that's the draft dude is going to be Briere, where Fletcher basically is then the guy that's like, okay, I approve this message, and then agrees with that, basically. And that's why I think they have Forster, to me, like I said in our tag. I don't know how he's playing if he's up now, but that's also because this team is a dysfunctional family. But I think he would have earned his way up because of his minor league play if he didn't get injured. York already is showing good success. Tumala in his leagues is showing good success and played well in his first couple games with the Phantoms before they sent him back overseas. So, like, I think we picked all right since Hextall left. And my issue with Hextall wasn't necessarily picking from the jump. It's how it's a hindsight's 2020 thing, but when you look back, he drafted goaltending fine. He got piped up by a couple Fairbies of the world, but overall, he didn't really draft that well. He built up the goaltending depth, which was his position. And then he got Fairby, which is great, but he didn't get many other guys that are in the Fairby category. He got guys like Morgan. He got guys that didn't. He got guys like Patrick in the draft. Cal McCarr was in. So he got guys that really didn't pan out as well as you would want them to necessarily be for your team. And that's all for different reasons, depending who we're talking about. But either way, it goes to the point of, in the end, the buck kind of comes to, well, you're the guy that actually was the last guy drafting, where it wasn't the Fletcher situation where he delegates. Hextall didn't delegate to anybody. And that's the issue I had with him. You can't think you're all knowing. That's the main issue I have with Ron Hextall. I think he can be a good GM if he, like I said to you in tech, if he loosens his grip a bit. The reason I think he was a good GM at first and people liked him is more he's the old Ruhaha. We loved him as a goaltender. We love him for what he's done for the organization as a whole, dude. Then when they realized what he was doing and kind of not banking on his promise of rebuilding the farm system, like he said, that's when people are like, okay, this dude might not be as good of a GM as he was, obviously, what he was for a player for us. The way he can change that is if he becomes a little bit less hot-headed and a little bit less hard-headed. But I don't know if Ron Hextall is going to do that, and that's something that's going to be interesting to see with Pittsburgh. If it seems like they keep drafting more like we did, which I don't think will work out, if they kind of pick a little bit more mix of old school and new school like Hextall tried to do, or if they kind of just go with the best guy in the first round and not try to get the bigger skaters that might have to develop more over time guys that Hextall tended to go for sometimes.
I have a. I only look at what I see from the outside and what I see indications of what happened there in Philadelphia. I think early on he gave rein to the scouting staff to a certain degree, but I really think that Hextall wanted to change the scouting staff altogether. And I think he was getting blocked a lot from the things he wanted to do, which is the reason why he got pig-headed. I think he felt like a bit of a puppet and decided, you know what, I'm going to just do what I'm going to do, and that's it. And if you don't like it, I'm out. And that's what happened. And I don't think you're going to see that in Pittsburgh because I do think he believes that draft and development system is miles ahead of Philadelphia's. And I would agree with him totally, way ahead of Philadelphia's. The whole philosophy.
The development system, I would say a big part in why our drafting hasn't been as good is our development system. I would actually not say Pittsburgh's drafting is that much ahead of the Flyers. I think the Flyers have drafted fine. They just haven't developed the talent they've got to be as good as they were when they drafted. In a sense, they made people worse than they were when they drafted them. That's pretty much what this team has been doing for a while, where Pittsburgh picks the Genschels of the world and then turns them into Jake Genschel. But they also pick the Poulins of the world, who are basically Morgan Frost and are taking longer to come up than you would have liked and aren't finding it as quickly as you would have liked. So I don't think Pittsburgh's
finding guys deeper in the draft too, or at least developing.
Yeah. But that's also
developing guys deeper.
Part of that goes. Yeah, that's true, but the Flyers' issue to me has never actually been. I thought Hextall picked better in terms of fill roster guys because he never really picked the next Giroux ever. He picked a Fairby that's probably going to be the next Gagne, but that's not going to be the guy that can carry your team into the future necessarily. He was the secondary contributor Gagne's entire career. I just think we kind of overblow. I think Fletcher's so far drafted fine, and I think Pittsburgh, I would say the development is much better, which is what makes their drafting look better, where we draft guys that are talented, and then we try to make them into something they're not, which is why they get injured every 5 seconds half of the time. And then that is why they don't develop. Like the Flyers are a team that tries to shove a circular hole into a, not even a square peg, but like a freaking octagon type peg that's smaller than the circle you're trying to put into it. It's like everything they do half of the time doesn't make sense because you're put guys in roles in the minors that they're never going to be in the NHL. Well, that's why I like what Lappy's been doing more this year, and that's what I was kind of saying in tech. After he's figured out the coaching end of things and not just what he was with the Flyers, which is more like player relations and development, he's been able to kind of develop these guys and kind of make them feel, I think, their most comfortableness, their best, and that's why Ratcliffe's had his best season to be able to have a chance to be up this year. I think a lot of that gets credit to LaPerriere, where Gordon, who Hextall brought in, was not able to ever get anything other than his rookie season before he started getting injured out of Ratcliffe. But he fits into the category of someone they tried to make him who he isn't. He's a bigger skater that can skate, but he's not a guy that's supposed to be like laying on hits like he's Josh Anderson or something. That's never been what he was. He's always been a guy that's bigger, can skate, uses his body for his advantage, but not to that. He can hit guys off the puck, but they were trying to make this dude into like the second coming of like like Getzlaff or something as a second-round pick, and that's just not what he ever was going to be. So, like, I think the Flyers have had bad expectations for their prospects for a while and have tried to make them something they're not. And I know a lot of people I've talked to, whether it's fans or a couple guys when I'm at Phantoms games or Royals games, a lot of them feel similar, if it's not the same exact way, that we just fail in development. Where the development side, I completely agree with you with Pittsburgh. But drafting, I don't think they've really drafted that much better, because drafting, the first part of drafting is drafting good players, but the second part is, unless if you're great, if you're just taught all the wrong things after you're drafted, you probably ain't going to be that good at the next level. Like, unless if you're like the Ovechkins, the Crosby, you have that great work ethic, and no matter, despite it all, you're going to be good, and you're one of those guys. If you're just said, if you're taught all the wrong things after you get picked, you're not going to be as best as you can be at the next level. And that's what I think has hurt the Flyers and is starting to turn around. I think Briere is the perfect guy to help turn it around, because he's great at all those things. But it's been starting to turn around at the lower level with Ian LaPerriere, and before Ian LaPerriere, to have the Max Woolmans grow from the Royals, and now you have Hodgson, who is probably going to get a two-way contract. Kirk McDonald's one of the best ECHL coaches at developing talent. So I think they started focusing on it slowly and surely, but it's just, why did it move this slow? That's more what it is. Like, that's what they have to answer for to the fans. It's nice that you're starting to see them trend like the Phillies did and started to get different stuff for development and everything. But people said the same thing for them. Why the hell did it move this slow? And that's the biggest thing for me. I think we're starting to trend in the right direction. But my big thing is, will it last? Will they have enough patience? Because I don't think Dave Scott has from much patience. So that's the thing that is going to be what plays out going forward, because I think the way this ownership is, and the way they're going to try to stay competitive, being a conglomerate like they are in Comcast, is by trying to kind of get those contracts. We talk about, like, maybe overpaying the Stromers of the world, where I would love to have Ryan Strome on my team, but not for $8 million. So, like, maybe paying him $8 million, because they want to stay as competitive as possible, so they make the best bottom line. And it's not the Ed Snyder mentality of, we want to be competitive, but we want to be competitive in the sense of, we're coming right for you, and we want to be a potential cup contender every year, not just we want to be over the green line and making money every year.
I mean, there's no. I'll just go back to it again. I don't care. Like, okay, the drafting wasn't great. Great, get better scouts. Whatever you got to do, whatever you do. But the philosophy was right. Hextall's philosophy was correct, I believe. You had to wait out.
Oh, that I agree with. Oh,
you had to wait out these contracts, then trade Giroux and Voraceks and stuff like that, and build this organization again. And I could be wrong, but I think that he wanted to change the whole philosophy for drafting and developing and all that stuff like that. And I think he was blocked. And that's the reason why he came off as so stubborn, is because he wasn't going to bend. And, Hextall did well for himself. He didn't need to, like, if you fire him, you fire him. He doesn't care. And he was just sticking he finally just put his feet in the sand and said, no, this is what has to be done. I believe that. And if you don't believe that, then fire me and I'll move on. That's what I think happened there.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. I think his strategy of what he wanted to do was smart. The execution wasn't the best. That's all it is. Where I definitely agree with that. If he can execute better in Pittsburgh what he wanted to do, which was build up the farm system, then they're going to be very solid.
But they left the strategy is what ticked me off. They threw the baby out with the bathwater. They didn't like the way he did it, or didn't like the person, but they left the strategy when they brought in Chuck Fletcher. And you bring in Ellis, and you try to swing for the fences for Risto Ristolainen, who isn't going to be ready for probably 3 years before he can be a decent defenseman, because of the lack of development he's had at the money that he has for a first-round pick. And we've seen it over and over again in Philadelphia. And I think that was when they grabbed that goaltender from Arizona. I always forget his name.
Brizgalov. Yeah,
Brizgalov. Just reaching for the fences in desperation moves rather than a plan that
No,
has a systematic.
I completely agree. That point, and I didn't understand that's the point you were getting at in Texas much, but I do completely agree with that. You have to take a stance and stick with it. But I also think that's why I was saying earlier, separating Brett Flair and also now Briere, and he's kind of the one that handles the draft. Where Fletcher is the one that did make those moves, but at the same time, I think a big reason, and the press conference made me validate the point I always thought in my heart from the beginning. I think Dave Scott pushed that on him. I think he said, whatever AV tells you he needs, you better damn well check every
Could be.
box. But and that's kind of the what I take away from it. And the way the press conference, they seem to both kind of disagree with each other. Where he's like, well, we need to try to get more top end talent, Fletcher, I'm talking about, and try to do what we can to do that. Where Scott's like, well, no, well, kind of like without saying no, but kind of rebutted it in the words he was saying, where he's like, well, we think this could be a quick retool, where Fletcher was kind of more talking about, well, let's get the Tracys of the world that might be good top 6 guys in the future from like Anaheim or something like that, and develop them into being very good top 6 guys, where it sounded like Scott was more, well, let's get these already great guys that's not really as possible to actually have come to fruition. So
Yeah. Regardless, oof, what a mess in Philadelphia.
yeah, that's
It's a mess.
The thing is, though, the funny thing is, like I said, you got Lappy now developed. It's going to slowly, I think, work even if the Flyers keep failing, just because Reading for years now has been developing good since Kirk McDonald's come in, and the old owners brought him in as a head coach. Lehigh hasn't, because Gordon's more of a, if you want to win the Calder head coach rather than a development head coach. Where Lehigh now with Lappy, that's all he really got paid to do with the Flyers, player relations and helping them develop along. Now, he had to adjust to the coaching stuff, but he's been doing that since December. They haven't been as good in February, but other than this month, since December, they've been a much better team and got back in the playoff race. So I think he's starting to make inroads in that. It's now you have to make inroads at the big club level. Excuse me, at the mic. You have to make inroads at the big club level in order to make it actually have as much weight as you want it to have. And it's gonna trickle up, just as there's a trickle down effect. There's a trickle up effect. If you have things working at the minor league level, eventually these guys are going to come up and then be more prepared for the NHL level. But you also have to then obviously continue to develop and keep these guys around and not have Dave Scott overreact that are developing guys, so they can develop, say, the Tamalos of the world, who I said I like, when he comes over. So they have them there to develop them and don't go, well, the Phantoms didn't play as well as we hoped this year. Let's get rid. Like, you can't be doing that. So
Yeah, I think that I think that this needs to be washed. All like really just start. I like what Buffalo did. It was the one time I used to give Pagula a lot of, talk poorly about Pagula and the situation that went on there, and it went on for quite a long time with really poor decisions, as like a young Botterill. The one before him, and I always forget his name, that drafted Eichel. That guy was terrible. He just wasn't very. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
yeah, I know who you're talking about.
The guy that actually looked like he was crying because he lost poor Eichel. They didn't get McDavid, and he looked like he was crying. Like, you are drafting somebody who's very good, by the way. Anyways, Simpson.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was terrible. Like,
oh yeah, Simpson. Yeah, I think it was. Simpson. Yeah, they have had so many. That's why I think, even though he's had connectivity with the ownership, which I didn't like coming in, but I agree with you. The Pagulas get a rare on the hockey side of things nod for positiveness there when it comes to that, and actually kind of starting to turn that ship.
Yeah.
And I think, though, bringing in Kevin Adams, who was the right guy you actually have a relationship with, and not somebody that is just going to be a yes man every 5 seconds, was actually the right person to bring in, too, because it seems like, just from the way they're going and the moves that they're rumored to make, he isn't in the same way that the former GMs were, where they could kind of just be bullied by the Pagula. He has a relationship with them, but it seems like that relationship might actually be the opposite, where he's using that relationship to say, look, you might have had other people be yes men before, but if you want to do what you really want to do and you want to make the most money off this team and also make them the most successful, then we should be listening to me more, not you, because you guys are more football people, not hockey people.
Well, apparently what
Like,
I heard was, and if this is true, then great, because this is something that I think Philadelphia should do, and maybe Edmonton sort of tried to do, but maybe didn't do it the whole way, is apparently Pagula realized, you know what, I just picked the last two. I did this. I hired these people. Maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. And he actually hired a group of people to look at what had happened and transpired and what they had and let them pick who they think would be the best to lead, and they chose Adams. And apparently, when Pagula found out that they had chosen Adams, he was like, he did not want that, and they went to him and said, "Well, that's probably a good thing, isn't it? Because what you wanted up until now hasn't
okay, no,
worked
that's
as a
probably
darn."
what.
So, yeah,
That's actually probably why, because of what I was saying. I didn't know that, actually. That's interesting to know, but it probably goes with what I was saying, where Adams has a relationship with them, but he might have the relationship in turn of what past guys have, where it's more, I'm going to tell you off if I think you're wrong, rather than just agree with you, where past people kind of just agreed with him.
yeah,
Where it might be more, he might be more like, Jim, you're wrong. Just stop talking and let me do what I got to do, because you're not going to win this argument.
yeah.
And then that's basically the
Yeah,
end of
who
it.
knows what it
Like,
was, but it was probably. I mean, Adams is a very diplomatic guy, but so is Botterill. I think Botterill was more of a yes man, and I think when it comes right down to it,
no,
too,
that's this problem.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think Botterill was more of a yes man. Not because I think he is a yes man, but it was his first general manager job in the NHL. You know, like, my gosh.
You're going to be more of a yes man
You would
naturally.
think
Yeah,
so,
I get what
but
you're
then
saying.
this is the first one for Adams too, and I think basically he knew Adams before. They had talked lots, and Adams probably had a philosophy that wasn't what Pagula's was, and eventually they just realized. Anyways, so after that, Adams basically said, "We need to get rid of all of this." Which was everything that Pagula built, the scouting department, everything. They fired them all, and then hired all new all over again. So yeah, like, to your point, it seems like Adams was basically, I'm not doing this unless I'm doing it my way, and and that's what really had to happen. And whoever this team was said, you know what, I think you might want to listen to Mr. Adams. So
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that, in point, yeah, I agree with you. If Dave Scott would do that, that would help immensely.
yeah,
Since I unfortunately don't necessarily see that happening in the
yeah,
near future, I think the way that Middleton for the Phillies has still been involved, but take more of a step back because he hired a Dombrowski. I think bringing in a Briere has started to kind of help the development staff.
I
Like I
hope
said,
so.
Lappy, all those guys. But you do have to fire the scouts like Dombrowski's done with the Phillies. They brought in a whole new scouting team. That's the next step here. You've hired some new scouts since Flair's been in, but you didn't allow him, because like I said, he's more of the draft guy than Fletcher, and then now you have Briere. You didn't allow him to kind of bring in his people. So you still haven't done that, and he's still, in my opinion, drafted fairly well. So that's a plus for him, even when you haven't even had all your people with you.
Right.
So I think that's something they have to do, and then that's going to help them also in turn develop guys. But something I also wouldn't be surprised if they look at down the line, because that would give you kind of that figurehead that could kind of be the speaker to Dave Scott saying, no, we can't do that, because I don't think Fletcher is that, like you said. The Flyers might be smart to hire and it might be smart for someone like the Flares of the world or the Brières, who seems to not mind saying anything off the cuff. Like he already said, we haven't developed well pretty much since coming in, and we have to draft better. So he has no problem saying what he thinks. But, like, you might have to have one of those guys say, we might need rather than just a GM, we might need to be a team that needs a president of hockey operations, so we can have somebody that comes in and has kind of just been there, done that, has won a couple cups, and can literally go to Dave Scott and say, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Just let me do my job. And like they might need to have somebody like that. As much as Dave Scott's going to hate that, he might just have to accept it if he wants the team to be as good as he wants it to be.
Yeah. I didn't think Pagula would do it, but he did it, and and that's all. Like again, I don't know any factual information on this. Is what I heard. So whether this is actually like it's for certainly not verbatim, but it does look like something like that happened. Okay, finally we got a couple minutes here, and the next news up, and people have been asking me and asking me and asking me about this. And the only thing I can say is my inclination is that something's going to happen that's going to be like we never saw coming, and that is Eichel coming into the for Vegas, and everybody talking about trading Marchand and trading Dadonov or trading Smith and all of those sort of things like that. I think Smith is likely, but I think something's going to happen there that you're going to be like, I really didn't see that coming. Why? Because that's exactly what Vegas does. And we've seen it over and over again. It happens. Where cap space, they just get creative, and all of a sudden, boom, they got cap space.
Yeah, like for example, somehow Vegas is giving us a bunch of the guys that they want to get rid of cap space for, like the Smiths and potentially Carlsons of the world, and then all of a sudden you see Claude Giroux on Vegas, and you're like, wait, how the hell? Where did the and everyone's going, how the hell did this happen?
Right.
Yeah, like something like that as an example.
Well, they got a whole team of people working on that, and I just have a feeling we're going to wake up one day and go, how they did it. Like
that actually wouldn't be a terrible trade for the Flyers. Now that I just thought about that, if they can't get prospects, just getting two people that are already good, just because if Dave Scott wants to retool, if you got William Karlsson, Riley Smith, and a pick, you get two guys that are already NHLers.
I can't see Karlsson be that. Smith maybe. Smith is going to be a free agent at the end of the year that they probably can't sign.
Well, I'm just saying if they're going to, the reason they might do that is if Giroux says he would re-sign with Vegas, they would have Jack Eichel, Chandler Stevenson, and then Claude Giroux, who's better than William Karlsson, at their top three centers, and then Nicholas Waugh would then be the fourth line center. Or
they're not gaining any cap space doing that. They need to get rid of $10 million in cap space like yesterday.
Yeah. That's a fair point. Yeah. Well, the thing is, that is $10 million though. Like that's why I was saying. If they did that, like you were saying, that's the only reason I brought that up is an unexpected move, because if they could do that and then flip somebody else, which would fit into the unexpected move where I don't know who that would be, but like you were saying, the lessen cap, that's $10 million for a guy that gets paid $8 something, and then at the same time you have to remember these guys only get paid like half of their salaries now for the rest of the year. So like they're still trading more salary than they're getting back for Giroux if you trade Karlsson and Smith, and then
but everybody
Giroux
gets,
that.
everybody gets
I just
paid
threw it
half,
out there more.
So there's still you still gotta lose the salary of the actual cap hit. Everybody gets it, so you still have to. I agree with Mark Brown. I think all of a sudden there's going to be a couple players injured for a while.
Yeah, it could be.
That's the easy way to do it. Yeah. Karlsson's injured, and they don't need that second line center anymore. So all of a sudden Karlsson's injured, and pick a player, Theodore.
Well, Stone's already injured, so like Mark said.
Stone on long-term injury reserve or whatever.
White Cloud's already injured, who's been playing well. I'm not sure how injured or how long White Cloud's out for.
That's likely what's going to happen. And then, like you said, pull the Kucherov, I think is what he meant to say, pulling the Kucherov. I've been back and forth on that whole Kucherov idea, whether they did that or not. But because when he went, because he eventually was out again, right? Because of the same injury. But then he came back as fast as he did. I don't know, but it was already reported. Oh, it was already reported today. There we go. Stone's on.
Yeah, so Stone's on.
There you go. He's making what, $8 million a year or something like that.
Stone's 9.5 actually.
Oh, there you go. Boom.
Yeah.
Eichel comes in. He goes on long-term injury reserve. Get some rest, buddy. Keep in shape.
They might still flip though. I was reading on The Athletic. Excuse me. They might still flip. one contract, because then it helps them. Like Vegas, if they flip, like you said, they don't necessarily need with Eichel coming back every one of the centers they have. So if they do decide to flip Carlson just because he gets paid more, or Riley Smith, they have flexibility there, especially since William Carlson isn't playing the most. Like, he's playing fine this year, but it's not like he's doing the most fantastic for them this year. He might actually do better at this point. Somewhere else, he's having a little bit of a down season for himself compared to his other seasons with the Vegas. But I would say they have something. I would say they would still be getting rid of one other guy, because then they're still setting themselves up for cap hell that they're just going to have to worry about later. When, like you even pointed out, once you get Eichel back, you have Mark Stone back. You already have a crap ton of forwards between the Howdens, the Colasars, the Roys, the Jan Marks, the Marchessaults, the Danoff, Stevensons, the Pacioretty's of the world. Like, you don't need all of them. So, like, I think one of those guys would still go just to help the cap. It would probably likely be Riley Smith, but just because they are deep at center, I wouldn't be shocked if they trade William Carlson, because William Carlson, even though he's having a little bit of a down year as a whole, he's still playing fairly well this year. 0.53 points per game isn't bad. He's just not playing like he has always.
That line's been playing more of a shutdown role.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know what
he's also worth a lot. You might get a lot for Carlson in terms of, like, the surprise. I feel like Carlson would fall into the unexpected surprise trade where you're expecting Smith to get traded, but because Carlson is controlled to 2027, they might get a lot of very low paid, good, like, NHL ready guys for him, or already the prospects that have already been up in the NHL for other teams that they don't even fully need yet. So then those guys are playing in Henderson when they should really be playing in the NHL. So they might get a trade that actually really works out for them. That's just going to help them even more in the future when they don't necessarily need. William Carlson's kind of a luxury when Eichel comes back. He's great to have, but he's more of a luxury at that point. So if you can get something that really helps you, I wouldn't be surprised if they do so.
I wouldn't be surprised. They could replace a couple picks, because they certainly don't have any.
Yes.
They've given up a lot. It's so that, but that does. That's what I thought was going to happen. They're just going to put Stone on the long-term injury reserve, and I don't know if the league will ever investigate into this, or if there's any way to possibly happen. Because, man, these coincidences happen often, where you just need $10 million and voila. $9.5 million on the LTIR, especially when.
I think it's just one of those things. Like, you would have to be too dictatorial in order to make a rule on it, because, like, if somebody's like, "Oh, I'm injured," like, unless if, like, you're telling these doctors to be, like, as strictly, like, ridiculously thorough as possible, like, there's no way to really know if someone's like BSing or not, unless you put them on, like, a lie detector test, which you're not going to do. You're not going to do that for the LTIR.
Well, there's
so,
such
like,
a gap for what a doctor can say you can do or not do too, right? Like, in certain situations, a doctor will say, you go, but it's up to you, or, you know what I mean? Like, or, it's probably not the best for you, but you can get through the playoffs, and then we'll work on it after that. But in a situation like this with Stone, it'd be like, yeah, you could probably take a month or so off, or whatever the case may be. But now, if Eichel's not coming into the lineup right now, does the doctor say that? No, probably not.
No, that's my point, though. Like, you're not going to be able to tell if what the doctors are saying is true. Like, that's such a gray area that I don't think there's really a rule. Like, I don't really blame the league for that, like other people do, because I think it's such a great. There's not much of a rule. Yeah, there's not really a way you can control people's psyche and the way that they tell you things, and then the way that other people perceive those things, to either if they're true or not, that you're going to then be penalizing teams for something they didn't do, and then not penalizing teams for something they did do. It's just probably not going to work out.
It's a delicate balance. I mean, there's no way you could say, because then if you go the other direction, guys are going to be playing hurt too much. And so it's like, they're going to circumvent the cap, and it's just up to you if you want to be the one that does that or not. But then you can judge. Do I think they're circumventing the cap here? Absolutely. I'm almost for sure that's what they're doing here. But is there anything you could do about it? No. No, I don't think.
Not much, yeah. And I think, excuse me, the whole LTIR thing, like I said, that's just not. It's one of those things that's like you're kind of stuck in a crossroads because you can't. Because, like you said, the biggest thing nowadays is make sure everybody stays as healthy as possible. You don't want any of the CT issues, which is the right thing to do, obviously. But then that's not going to work if you start all of a sudden saying, well, we're not going to let guys be put on LTIR unless if we have like 100% concrete evidence, whatever you deem that to be. Like you were saying, where then you're just setting yourself up for failure for the thing you've been working so hard on doing in the past decade, which is not having guys end their careers and then having extra brain, head, CT, like different like symptoms issues after their career.
Yeah.
So that's not going to help if they're playing injured already and then get a blow because they're already playing on a bummed leg, and when they're not playing on a bummed leg, they probably could have got out of the way of the hit, and then because they're playing on a bummed leg because they couldn't go on LTIR, now they get rocked. Like that's not going to help anybody out.
This problem with his back has been hurting with him trying to play through. Yeah, of course that's what they're going to say. I mean, the question is whether, if it was a playoffs right now, do you think Stone would be not playing or playing? He'd be playing for sure.
You're definitely going to play them. The back, because Giroux played through 2 fractured freaking wrists in a postseason. You're not going to stop playing if it's the postseason.
Yeah, look at now we're back on the Oilers again, right back full circle. Bill comes in and says he's fine, glad that Tippett is gone. In a lot of ways, I agree with you, Bill, and I like Lauren chimes in and says the fans will rejoice for more mediocre play, and I agree with both of you. I agree with Bill that probably Tippett wasn't the best guy and all of that, but I also agree with Lauren that don't expect much better. I don't think you're going to see much better with the new coach with that defense the way it is, and I think that's what Lauren meant when he said that. And I'll tell you, I talk to people in Oilers land all the time, and there's a lot of people thinking that coaching was the problem in Edmonton, and I just disagree. I just think that defense, the way it's been made up, is not good. It's just not good. It's not a good combination of players. Each player individually in a different role on a different team, maybe. But you've got Duncan, Keith, Barry. Nurse is not spectacular defensively, although he's getting better. Bouchard, there's just too many of the same kind of guys that, and Ceci would be, if Ceci was the type of player he is great, but he's not a top 4. They need a guy that is like a Ceci, that's a top 4 guy, that's a shutdown type guy that can play, not a Sherratt, not somebody like that, but somebody that can actually play in the top 4. They just got way too many guys that can't do anything in the defensive end of the puck.
I think the righty they're trying to develop into that is probably Bouchard, who can play solid on both ends. That they're trying to develop into a top. Not now, he's not going to do all the physical things of Cody Ceci, but like can play a good top 4 game on both ends of the ice and add much more offense than Cody Ceci. I think he's the guy they're probably going to try to develop into the great right-handed two-way defenseman. That's also why, at this point, I would just play him with Darnell Nurse because the line pairing makes more logistical sense than Tyson Barrie with Darnell Nurse, which makes absolutely zero
sense.
That's like with Flyers. Not to just to go back to the Flyers real quick. Like everyone was getting on New York a little bit in the last couple games he played for the All-Star game. I'm like, I love Keith Yandel as much as the next guy, but Keith Yandel ain't it anymore. Like Keith Yandel's just playing because he's extending the streak. Let's be honest. Like I love Keith Yandel. He's one of the funniest guys to listen to on a podcast, but he's just not it anymore. And they paired a guy that's move the puck up the ice defenseman, more offense than he has defense, but has got very well outgrown his defensive game in Lehigh and York with a guy like Keith Yandel. Tell me where that makes. Like that's why sometimes you just got to look at things as they don't make sense. You can't get mad at a player for not performing in that instance necessarily.
Bill was talking about Rask, and if you remember, Bill, I said that my lean was that Rask was going to retire, and he did, and he gave it a good go. But those hip problems at 35 years old. Apparently, that hip problem is like, a baseball player if he doesn't get the Tommy John in time. A lot of the baseball players get the Tommy John right away before they even start their career, so they make sure that they get it in time. That's what that hip surgery is basically. There's kids at 18, 19 getting that surgery because they realize that they're probably going to need it later. And of course, Rask didn't come up at a time where they were aware of that. And it was just too late. And that's why I thought it was pretty likely that he would retire. I think people ask me if he was a Hall of Famer. He probably isn't. But if he would have had that surgery now, like before, like if he would have known about that, I think he would have been. It was mostly that pain.
It's going to be interesting, though, because John said it in his video, and I was looking at more comparable numbers. His goals against is only, or save percentage, is only one below Hasek. It's a decent bit above Brodeur and a decent bit above Patrick Waugh.
Wow. I didn't even realize that.
So, I feel like going off of that might put him in the Hall of Fame if they look at the comparables that way, because Rask has, I want to say, it's a 921 career save percentage, which is really high. Yeah, 921, where Hasek's a 922. And then Brodeur's are in like the 19s, I think, and so was I think Waugh was also in the 19s in his career, but he also Brodeur played more into the current age, where Waugh didn't as much. Waugh was actually a 910 for his career. So Rask is a full 11 points save percentage above him. So I feel like he has a chance. Is he going to be a guaranteed Hall of Famer? No, I don't think by any stretch of the imagination. But if I look at his comparables, where I didn't realize he was that high in the all-time guys when it comes to those numbers, I would probably vote him in personally just because of looking at his comparables. And also, I'm kind of biased because I like Tuukka Rask from the jump. But also, just looking at his comparables, that would be my reasoning for voting him, not my bias.
I never really did look at his statistics, but I always thought that the Bruins fans and people underrated him greatly just by watching him. Like, he was an incredible goaltender. And if he did go in the Hall of Fame, I wouldn't argue a bit. So maybe I'm saying that he should. You know what I mean? I think that his problem has been this injury. He's been injured quite a bit and then trying to fight it and stuff like that. But when he's been perfectly healthy, the guy's lights out. He's been a beast.
He's been absolutely.
And I think it's just the injury in general that has that maybe keep him out, because he didn't play the amount of games that a lot of the people you just mentioned, that all of them did. He didn't have the games played as much as, and then of course, Dominic Hasek, when you're comparing his numbers, I mean, he did that in Buffalo. All right. He also did that on a Boston team that was one of the best defensive teams in this generation. So that's a problem. But so was Brodeur doing that.
Yeah, Brodeur was on good teams during his time. I mean, if you look at his comparables, I would say he definitely has a good chance to be in there, because he's just always consistently, similar to how we always talk about how has Fleury ever been the best goaltender in the league during his career? Not necessarily, other than maybe one or two seasons. Like, he won the Vezina like a couple seasons, but not consistently for a 5-year stretch like some other Hall of Famers have been. But the thing is, he's been a consistently great goaltender his entire career, and the same goes for Tuukka Rask, where I think that should also get you in the Hall of Fame if you're just consistently great, and then you have years that you are the best. That goes a long way as well, I think. And Rask, if I remember correctly, I think he actually, let me look up before we go real quick. Flower has a career 913 save percentage. So Rask also is above Flowers. So yeah, I would say from his comparables, he would definitely be a Hall of Famer. Now looking at it even more so than I did before hopping on the podcast.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, his save percentage and everything. I like I said, I wouldn't argue if they didn't. I'm not the whole Hall of Fame thing. I kind of I don't know. I stay out of because sometimes they put people in for different reasons and all that stuff like that. To me, he's a Hall. To me, he's one of the greatest goaltenders I ever saw, and I just leave it at that. When he was on, he was unstoppable. I don't care about what his defense was like. I can, like I said, when you're comparing Dominic Hasek, he did it in a Buffalo team that was terrible. He put up those numbers. He's the greatest of all time. He's the greatest for at least a 3-4 year stretch. I don't think I've ever seen a goaltender stop pucks like Dominic Hasek ever.
Oh no, yeah. That's why Hasek's not really the best compared.
He's not.
That's why I threw. That's why I threw in the other guys there because they.
Drury, I mean, he played in a very defensive system in New Jersey, one of the most shut down. I mean, that system was so shut down that it has lore like the Jersey Trap. You know what I mean? And but the fact of the matter is, when he was on, you couldn't get anything past him. Like, he was incredible.
No. And that's the same for Flower. That's the same for Reyes. That was the same for Waugh. Like, I think all those guys, they deserve to be in the in the hole. And that's the only thing that'll hold him back is the fact that he never won his own cup potentially.
Anyways, we'll stick with Boston for a bit here. Bill Tortolet is asking about, if one of the Swayman or whatever gets injured. I think there's a different concern than that, but I'll throw that to you because I think every team pretty much is in that book anyways, right?
I think most teams, there's a few teams that have 3 deep goaltenders. Like, for example, St. Louis with the way that they've been able to develop Lindgren, and he came in and played well. But there's not many teams that really have fantastic 3 deep. They would have been the oddity and the best team with Reyes. It does concern me in a sense, though, because Troy Grosnick's been good his entire minor league career, but he obviously has only found a few runs. I think one of them was with the Kings, if I remember correctly, where he's been successful at times in the NHL. And then their other guy, I'm trying to remember his name. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's a prospect goaltender that played in college and hasn't had NHL experience yet and is playing fine for Providence. But, you don't really want to have to ride your coattails on somebody like that. So if injuries do come, I think it's a concern to me. But in terms of those 2 goaltenders are concerned to me, no, not at all. I think Jeremy Swayman's a fine goaltender. I think Allmark's a fine goaltender. It's just they have to try to get consistent together, where this year it's kind of in one's up here, then the other kind of goes here. And then, so if they can kind of become a great 1A, 1B tandem, like Halak and Rask became for years, then they'll be set, because realistically Tuukka Rask was so great because they always had a guy that didn't have to overtax him like some other guys had to be in different parts of his career, like Cam Talbot's earlier in their careers, and other goaltenders, Morton Jones when he was with the Sharks, because they always had the great B option, and I think they still have that now. Most teams don't have a great C option. The Bruins would have been one of the rare teams to have that. I think they have a decent one in Grosnick, but do I think they could add depth there? Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they trade for a guy that's more of a proven commodity that's had more NHL time from the minor league levels, maybe. But I don't think they necessarily have to, but wouldn't shock me if they do.
I'm going to stick with my original thing that, yes, Swayman and Allmark may one day be a great duo, but they're not now yet. And Boston is probably not a cup contender because of that. It was like a shot in the dark that Rask could come back and get back to his old self. If that was the case, they might have been a contender. But they're not. Well, I'm just saying they're not. And so if one of them gets injured and they got to bring some young guy up, I don't think it really matters because they're not a contender anyways. So I wouldn't be throwing away too many picks to get a guy. Maybe, like you said, a veteran, so they don't have to throw some young kid in the fire, something like that. But that would be about it right now. And I don't know.
Yeah. Like, for example,
we could see possibly swing. We've seen it. How many times have you seen some young goaltender just go off in the playoffs? It's possible, but I just don't think it's likely. That's all.
It's also
we saw Allmark play really well when he was healthy. His big issue was actually staying on the ice with Buffalo more so. But when he was healthy, we've seen him run in spurts for an absolutely putrid team. So where he's actually played decent there, where here, like John was talking about probably like a month ago now, a couple weeks ago when I had him on to talk about the Bruins, he started playing better after Sway was kind of a little bit more inconsistent. So if they can kind of also find the consistency at the same time, are they ready to be the perfect duo yet? No, I think that would be a couple years away if that's the case and that happens. But can they catch fire at the right time and all stay consistent at the right time? Like you said, we've seen that happen before many of times, and I wouldn't be surprised if that could happen again, because that's happened throughout history multiple times that teams don't necessarily get to the playoffs, and for that matter, the cup, just because of one goalie. They get to the playoffs and the cup for both of the goalies they have on the roster. But we'll have to see as time goes on. Like a team that will fit into that category of if they can recover and make it would also be Dallas, where you have the youngster, obviously, and Adi, and then you brought in Holtby, which made more sense now because of the whole the whole Bishop thing. So I think that kind of plays into if two guys catch fire and you have the young guy kind of Swayman jump to Ottinger's level, then you're kind of at a different conversation there, so to speak.
Sticking with Boston, we'll finish off with this because I got to go pick up a little lady here right away. Yeah, somebody brought up the whole Marchand thing, and it's 6 games I believe he was suspended for.
I think it was 6, not 8.
And
I think it was 6,
I've
not 8.
Championed Marchand. I love him as a player. I didn't love everything he did, but for the most part, I love his heart and I love his warrior type. But that was selfish, and he deserved every game. That was terrible. That's honestly because he was like that before. I thought he'd matured past this. And honestly, that is so bad. I would not be surprised if Boston entertains breaking ties with Marchand. I seriously think that is a possibility in this. I don't know what
just because of their culture, the way that the Boston Bruins culture is like, you gotta go to our like ways, or if you start doing stuff like this, we don't really jive with you anymore. Is that kind of what you're going on?
It's so selfish. They needed him in this spot to make the playoffs right now. And what he did was not helping any of his teammates at all. Did you think that what he did was helping any of his teammates?
No. I thought what he did, I didn't necessarily think, because the NHL sometimes is light on suspensions to my liking rather than go to the level. I thought he was honestly going to get maybe 4 games max. So 6 games is that. Yeah, six is actually. I was kind of happy they actually laid down the hammer a little bit there. But for me, it's the same thing. Marchand, I've got on him in his career a little bit more than you have, just because of the things he's done. But when push comes to shove, would I like the guy on my team because of the way he plays hockey? Yeah, 100% of the time, dude's going to be a Hall of Famer. But like the thing is, you can't be doing things like this and expect people to not come at you for it, because which wasn't even, you knocked the puck out of Yari, who was just trying to give a Penguins fan in your stadium the puck out of his hand. Then you decide to sucker punch him, and then compounded by the fact you decided to sucker punch him, you then Paul Bunyaned him across the face with your stick as you were skating away. So there's it wasn't like you got 1 strike in one game or 2 strikes in one game. You literally had the phrase in baseball, 3 strikes, you're out, all in one game. So yeah, that definitely deserves at least 6 games for me. Where 8, I wonder if somebody said 8 because that they thought maybe it would end up being 8, or maybe somebody misreported as 8, but I thought I saw it was 6.
This one in particular sits. You know what? I don't even mind the licking so bad. I love the type of game he has, but this one sits wrong with me in particular because normally Marchand is doing things to defend his teammates or to really get somebody off the game. This game, he looked like a guy that was just being a selfish brat. Like it was really something didn't sit right with me with this period. This alone, I don't know what the.
Yeah.
I'd like to know the backstory of what happened going into this game. Is he intimidated by the whole Pittsburgh persona? That Crosby is there, the comparison. Like there's something that seemed like he was an insecure, spoiled brat in this game to me.
Yeah, and that's what some of the announcers, which I guess at the moment before the second play happened, it could have been kind of funny, but like they kind of, I think it was actually more in Sports Center or something. But when they went to like the cut, they kind of played it off as, oh, Marchand says, "Not in my house. You're not giving a puck to somebody else." Which, if that's where it ended, I don't think he.
I think it was funny, actually, kind of. I don't mind that necessarily so much.
Yeah, that part was more funny. Now, should you have done that? No, because if he's trying to make a fan's day and yada yada, you should just let it happen. But if that was more just a funny event that took place, and Yari then could have just went back out afterward and just gave a guy a puck if he wanted to. And
Jari found something that Marchand just hit a nerve with Marchand, and it wasn't about the team anymore. It was about Marchand. He was, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's
exactly.
There. I know that Jari did kind of do a Hextall kind of back to the leg chop to somebody. It wasn't Marchand. He might have saw it, but I don't think that was anywhere near enough to just go punch a guy like that and then stick his.
No, and that's also not the first time I've seen. I see Tristan Yari do that a good bit if you get close to him in the increase. Actually, he's probably one of the goalies that I've seen do that the most out of most. If you get near him and you piss him off, he's probably going to give you a Hextall.
Which I think he should get a slashing penalty like anybody else in that situation. I don't agree with it, but none of that means that you do what Marchand did in that game. That was
no, exactly. Yeah, because you don't see. First of all, if anybody reacts like that, shouldn't it be the dude that just got clubbed in the back of the leg, not somebody, not the other guy on the ice? Like that's more like you shouldn't be the guy acting at like it would be more understandable. It still wouldn't be warranted, but it would be more understandable if it was that guy and not you. Like you doing it just makes it seem selfish.
Why not just go up to Jari and go face to face and say, "Hey, you want to go?" rather than sucker punch him from the side. Like, that was just ridiculous, man. Like, I wouldn't even have mind if Marchand got all yappy and he took the abuse. He's going to take that. Because that's what I love about Marchand. If there's one thing about him, he's not afraid of taking abuse. It's not like Marchand, you know what I mean? Like, he's willing to do that. But for some reason, he got all sucker punchy and stuff here. It wasn't even like Marchand, really. It was bad. It was really bad. It looked bad for the league. It looked bad for the Boston Bruins. And I don't know what his response is going to be to the Boston Bruins for this, but I don't think he's just going to be having a problem with the league here. I think Sweeney and everybody in that is going to be like, okay, what's going on? Do you want to be a Bruin? Like, do you care about this organization now? Like, really, this was really bad.
Well, also, he better watch out the next time he plays because it's not like Pittsburgh doesn't have a couple people that can come in and take your head off at the beginning of the game. So he better watch out the next time they play.
In the next game that they play at Pittsburgh or whoever, basically the guys that do that sort of thing in Boston has got to stick up for a guy who act like a spoiled brat, jerk, selfish bee. And they don't want to. You know what I mean? Like, that's the whole code of hockey. If you do something, make sure your team has your back. Because if I got to go put my body on the line against a Reeves or, somebody like that because you're just a spoiled bee that doesn't, made selfish moves, it affects the team a lot. And in this case, I don't think anybody's got Marchand's back in the Boston Bruins uniform right now. I don't think anybody's thinking, "Oh, we got to help
No, I don't
Martial
think.
next game against Pittsburgh." I don't think anybody's saying that.
No, because if you react to something that, at least, even if you overreact, but you have something that makes sense to react to a high degree in, but you still overreact, that's fine. But like Marchand, like you said, is like some explicable reason Yari got under his crawl, and he just didn't let it go to the ultimate degree where, like you said, I'm not taking on, like, if like a guy that's really come on this year and even has a couple of fights, or even Brian Boyle, Anton Reese, even if a guy, he's only 5'11", but he's really come on this year and I've seen him fight a couple times while coming up. A guy like Rodriguez, or even a guy like Chapu, who's fought in the minor league levels and stuff. If you want me to fight those guys, I better have a reason, to fight those guys, or especially the Drew O'Connors of the world, who would literally murder you if you don't know how to fight. So I better have a reason to fight those dudes for you. It better not be you decided to act like a spoiled SOB, and decided to say that you were the only person that mattered on the ice tonight. That's not a reason I really want to fight somebody for you. Like, that's never going to get me jump in front of Zdeno Chara for you, just use a former Bruin.
Yeah,
that's
but
on a
I mean,
different.
anything like
that's
that.
just.
It wasn't good. It's not going to be good for him in the room. It's not good for. It really is just bad on Marchand in every single way. And the Bruins, I should say, would be very disappointed that he went back to this, and even worse, to this type of immaturity. Anyways, thank you for coming on, my friend. I got to get going here. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you all for coming on. Night. I will see if I'm back when I feel like at o'clock tomorrow. Probably. You'll find out. You'll get your notification. Steel Flyers All Sports Network is what we're part of. And what are you doing now, Joe? What do you got going on?
Yeah, you can find me on Flyers Nitty Gritty. Of course, Steel Flyers, Flyers Nitty Gritty is for all Flyers organization stuff from the Royals, Phantoms, and Flyers. The other stuff I've been doing is on my Sportsnet News. I've been doing stuff on the Women's Olympics, which is done now until they start the playoff round again on Friday. And now there's the Men Olympics in the prelims, like the women's were last week. So I'm about to be putting out a couple videos on games that already transpired in there that I've watched, and one that I was finishing watching up before I hopped on here. So like, it's all just different fun things involving the sport of hockey. I'm gonna have a couple videos out on baseball involving, if the lockout ends, some division projections that I don't agree with from Fangraphs, that I'm gonna say what they said and then say how I see it's gonna happen, and we'll see who's right if there is a season by the end of the season. So, or who's all wrong, and then we could all just be idiots. But we'll see what happens as the season comes to an end. So that's kind of the things coming in the future. And I'm going to try to get Andrew on, who's my co-host, who knows the most about basketball, so we can kind of go over the logistics and everything of the James Harden trade.
All right, buddy. Thanks for coming in, and I got to get out of here. Talk to y'all later. Thanks for coming on. Have a good day. Okay, bye.